Try telling me that red meat is bad for me when I was literally shitting 30 times a day. I started following this diet. Now I'm healthy. I'm off of all my drugs. Try telling me that red meat is bad for me when I did this so consistently. And also just have the common sense to think about the fact that if the government is telling you to eat 8 to 11 servings of whole grains a day, and 70% of the population is overweight or obese, yet we've thrived on meat for 2.5 million years, how is meat now killing us over the last 50 years? It doesn't add up.
Let's make some magic happen. You guys asked, we delivered. You know you saw me on their show before, the Meat Mafia, the only guys with the word mafia in it that's totally acceptable somehow. But you guys are the brilliant co-hosts and co-host of the Meat Mafia podcast, Brett and Harry. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
It's so weird being in your studio saying welcome to my show in this chair.
We're going to ask you some questions.
Okay. Is that what that?
It's just going to be a part 2 interview with you.
No, you don't want that. I'll talk too much again. Nobody needs that in their life.
I mean, it was such an amazing conversation. And we were saying this before we hit record. There's certain people that you meet in the space where you feel like you've known them for longer than you've actually met them before. And I feel like that was the 3 of us too. That's why we're so grateful to Ari who connected us. We had such a good episode with you. We dove into topics that we've never asked before. You talked about things that I think you publicly haven't talked about. And that's the beauty of a podcast, is there's just like amazing serendipity where you just let the conversation take you where it's supposed to take you.
Well, thanks, man. It was really great for the opportunity. Ari's been an amazing guy. When I did Drinking Bros when I was here, I had to give him like the Drinking Bro beer of the day because the guy needs some recognition in his life.
Yes.
So I wanted to have you both on the show, and I'm really grateful we got to have the studio and do it in person because I don't often get to do these in person. Hopefully more soon. But ultimately, I wanted to talk to both of you because you are very different ducks in this space, and I think in the best way possible. You stand out to me because you are radically different than other shows. You are not talking necessarily about, you know, libs of TikTok clips on your social media. You guys are talking about some serious things, ways that change people's health and look at diet. The way that you guys live your lives is really interesting. And I don't know that, I think you've been interviewed by a few shows, but I don't know how deep they got. So we're gonna go a little harder in the paint today.
Let's do it.
So let's get into it. How did you guys become stepbrothers?
That's
you take that one.
You want me to take it?
I love.
Well, we played baseball together in college.
Right.
That was sort of the start of it. So I was a year older than Brett, stopped playing after 2 years, and then Brett transferred in my junior year, and I was studying abroad at the time, didn't really overlap much. So we got connected my senior year when I wasn't even really on the team. He was hurt, and we started lifting together. That was like the origin story, is like he was just looking for somebody to lift with as he was recovering from a knee injury. And I remember going to get sushi with him and just getting to know him better. And it was like, all right, like this could be one of my guys. And then I graduated, stayed in Boston. He went to New York after he graduated, and we kind of drifted apart, just like, you know, not really having established roots with a friendship. And then we got reconnected through my really good friend and his really good friend. And it was just like very clear we were on similar paths, both kind of exploring what it would be like to be in an entrepreneurial position. Like we both wanted to take bigger risks and really felt like we had left some meat on the bone, no pun intended.
Yeah.
With
God, these are going to be good
too
puns.
Good. But like with our baseball careers, I think we both had this feeling that we wanted to do more, and we didn't capitalize on those opportunities that we had. So when we graduated, both of us wanted to do something big and got into roles that we were able to see what the real world was like, and just knew that there was a path out there for our own if we were willing to take the risk. So we ultimately ended up signing up for an Ironman together, and this was during COVID, and we had signed up for a half Ironman before, and through some of Brett's health issues, which I'm sure he'll talk about in a sec. But he didn't end up doing the race. I did it, and then we did a full distance Ironman together down here in Waco, and lived together for a month beforehand. And we're just like, all right, like this is my guy. We're on the same page. Like it's very rare to find those people that you want to actually start to do bigger things in life with. And it was clear that we both were like ready to take that step. I just quit my job, and Brett was like ready to make the move. So we started writing a bit online, and I think the rest is basically history. Started the podcast, and then started Noble, which is our company that we have together. Yeah.
Baseball, eh?
Baseball.
Do you guys come from sports family backgrounds?
My dad played baseball in college.
Okay.
So that's why baseball was always the sport that I was pushed into. And I loved it too. And my dad's one of my best friends as well. So yeah, he played at a really high level. My uncle played college baseball, my cousin. Yeah, I have a like pretty athletic background family wise. So
when you're saying college, you guys talking about, and bear with me, I'm Canadian, D1, like that kind of level stuff,
yeah.
Does that track?
Yeah. So obviously Division I is like the highest level collegiately. Then there's Division II, Division III.
Okay.
Where Harry and I overlapped was at Babson, which is a Division III school.
Okay.
So not as competitive as a Division I school, but it's a really good business program, entrepreneurship in particular, which is really interesting because Arthur Blank, who founded Home Depot, went to Babson. So he's
Perfect.
Yeah, so he's dumped like hundreds of millions of dollars into that school. But what's so interesting is that even though everyone has like an entrepreneurial focus, still like 99% of the people that you graduate with just go on to work corporate jobs.
Right.
And so I think for both of us, the commonality is like we both wanted our own thing. We just didn't know what that was until we really became friends and just kind of leaned into the unique passions that we had. And that was how Mafia was built. So it's like very much about fixing the food system, but it's also kind of an extension of our friendship too, which is really cool.
Which is the most adorable thing I've ever seen, by the way.
Yeah.
I've never seen, like, I'm around a lot of different people, but when you see two people that, it's true, I've seen you and I've heard you do it, you don't have to look at each other. You both think the same way. You both have similar value sets. You both have integrity in what you believe in. And I think we had this conversation right before I think you were trying to get keys, but we were talking really briefly about, things line up. When you have a similar belief system, integrity for the things that you believe in, and to the extent in which you do, it's so much easier to get along with people. You can it feels like you've known them a lot longer, and there's maybe a different level of vulnerability and openness that you wouldn't necessarily get if you know somebody was this big belief system. And there's nothing wrong with that. People can be different, but to see how you two meld, it really does feel like it was meant to happen, which is interesting because going from a sports background into this entrepreneurial journey, it must be nice to have each other walk this path together.
Yeah, I think to your point, Kelsi, it's like partnerships in general are such a level up when you do it right, whether it's business, friendship, romantic, etc. It's like when you pick that right person, they will fundamentally help you elevate to a level that you never could get to on your own.
Right.
So I don't think that this would have existed without Harry, and I think vice versa, because I think we both gave each other that push that we needed. We're like, I can tend to be over analytical about certain things, and Harry's more so like, no, let's just build it, let's do it. We'll figure it out later. And that's really what I needed as well too. So like he created the Twitter account first. I started writing Twitter threads because Harry was writing Twitter threads. He was the one that said, hey, let's start a podcast. Like he had a lot of those ideas. And that's what I think a great partner does, is they push you to another level that you normally wouldn't be able to get to on your own.
Right. And that's that visionary versus execution. You need to have both. And I think that's where a lot of people fall off. Or if you're doing something like I'm doing where I'm alone, it's like you have to play both sides. And that's what's really, the dynamic between you two is fascinating. I've seen how you podcast. I've listened to a ton of your content. And if people are just listening, going, who the Meat Mafia? They're the guys, remember the cry clip? That one. Those are the guys. But I bring it up because I think people right now in the world feel like they have to go things alone. I don't know if they're afraid of showing another side to somebody else, or if they're not going to be enough in that relationship, or they think they're worthy or have enough self-worth, self-love to say, like, I'm good enough to be partnered with someone in this. Like, I believe that I can be an asset rather than a liability. But you mentioned your health issues, so I want to talk about that. What's going on?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about us is that we have this brand in the nutrition space, but neither of us are quote unquote experts, right? It's like we don't have degrees in nutrition. We're not MDs. We're not chiropractors. We're just two average guys that kind of put in the 10,000 hours of trial and error to really figure out what combinations of food and diet and lifestyle inputs really help us feel our best. And I think we just have this fundamental belief that as humans, like our potential is unlimited if you know how to nourish your body with the right inputs.
Right.
And we both know what it feels like to feel really shitty and also feel really good, because you need that comparison of both of those extremes. And I would say feeling really shitty, pun intended, was honestly how I felt. So yeah, that was unintentional. But my health experience was really, I justified everything that I was doing under the lens of I'm a high level collegiate athlete, therefore I must be healthy because I can lift weights. I'm playing sports at a high level.
Okay.
I was just kind of following that calories in, calories out methodology. So, you know, it's so interesting, college too, right? It's like you pay $80,000 a year, you go into all this debt, you learn shit that you could probably just learn through YouTube. You're chronically stressed out, drinking alcohol, having sex with people. It's just like, it's just not the ideal human experience. And I think I kind of fell into that camp. So my senior year, I started having a ton of issues going to the bathroom. I was literally going to the bathroom like 30 times a day when I was at my sickest, ton of blood in my stool, ton of inflammation in my stomach, got hospitalized. And I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease.
Right.
And if you just Google autoimmune diseases in the US, over the last 50 years, you see this crazy skyrocketing of diseases, which never really existed. And we believe that that's from the wrong diet and lifestyle inputs as part of being modern Americans. But so I get diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. It's basically extreme inflammation in your large intestine, which is your colon. It's commonly confused with Crohn's.
Right.
Crohn's is small intestine. Colitis is large intestine, but they're basically the same thing. They just affect slightly different areas. And so with any of these autoimmune diseases, they tell you that these things are incurable. So the best that you could hope for is to go into remission. The doctors are immediately talking to you about putting you on all this expensive medication and drugs and steroids. And that was exactly the camp that I fell into. My doctor, amazing dude, but very conventional Western gastroenterologist. So he said, look, I think that this was genetic. No matter what you did, you were going to get this disease. They immediately put me on a drug called Remicade, which is a biologic drug. Cost $400,000 a year just for me to get the medication. So you can do the math on how much these diseases are causing the medical system, let alone all the other hosts of chronic diseases that exist in the US. And I kind of just went on my way. I was like, okay, well, not diet and lifestyle related. I'm on these drugs and meds. I'm just going to have to do this for the rest of my life. And that's going to be that. And then everything changed for me when I was 24 years old. It was 2019. Carnivore diet started to become a little bit more popular, definitely not mainstream to the levels that it is now, but I listened to Dr. Sean Baker go on Joe Rogan's podcast. He started talking about the carnivore diet, saying that eating animal products are wrongly demonized. They're the most nutrient dense foods, and they're also super bioavailable, which means that your body can properly digest and really absorb and utilize a lot of those micronutrients that are in animal foods. And he was saying that he had seen hundreds, if not thousands, of patients that had similar autoimmune diseases that were curing things that were supposed to be incurable. Yeah,
all of these autoimmune, it seems like anybody that's on a carnivore diet, once they have that, the symptoms just absolutely bottom out.
Yes. Like someone like Michaela Peterson, right? Double ankle replacement, told she's going to be dead, follows this lion diet. So like salt, red meat, water. Essentially cures herself, right?
Yeah, she talked about it on the show a little bit. It got flagged on YouTube because of course it did. Because of that. Yeah, when I had her on.
Yeah, so there's this amazing alternative health movement of people that are saying we're fatter and sicker than we've ever been before.
Right.
They're telling us to eat less meat. Yeah. I don't think that makes sense. What if I take my health into my own hands and become the CEO of my own health? Try this alternative wacky diet and see what happens, and they get drastically healthier, right?
Right.
And so that was me. So literally loaded up on steak, ground beef, chicken thighs, fish, eggs, water, coffee. And I just like relentlessly experimented with this thing. I don't know why, but I think because Sean Baker was talking about all these other patients that healed, that gave me my own proof of concept of if they can do it, why can't I do it? Absolutely. And I don't want to be dependent on this drug for the rest of my life. So I did that diet extremely consistently for about 2 years, and literally within the first week I felt like a different person. Like
first week?
It doesn't take, the thing is when people start making these extreme when they take their health into their own hands, it doesn't take that long.
Right.
Some people it does, but for a lot of people within a few days they'll notice positive symptoms.
Do you think that the reason it doesn't is because people aren't hyper consistent?
I think that's probably partially it. Some people are just so sick too that it just takes that constant iteration over years. But I think for me, going from processed foods, binge drinking, stress to I'm going to cook all my meals, I'm going to give my body the right nutrients it needs. It was like craving those things so strongly that as soon as it got a hit of those things, it responded incredibly well. So literally like stomach got drastically better. I went from going to the bathroom like 5 times a day down to like 1 to 2, which is life-changing for someone like me. Because when you have IBS, your whole life is revolving around where is the closest bathroom,
Right.
because I'm going to literally shit myself.
Right.
Which is super embarrassing for guys to talk about. But
No, I think
yeah.
it's way more common than people want to admit, and it happens really frequently.
100%.
I can't tell you how many people I know that have shit their pants this year.
Yeah.
It's March.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting is I think a lot of people have undiagnosed IBS and IBD, and we just accept these things that shouldn't be accepted at all.
Why do you think we're doing that?
I think when 65% of all calories consumed in the US are coming in the form of ultra processed foods, and we've kind of accepted such a low metabolic baseline, we don't even know what real food is. We don't even know what it feels like to actually feel good, right? Like I accepted this super low because I didn't know to have that contrast point of what does it mean to feel really good. So I think so many Americans are in this metabolic rut that until we actually allow them to eat real foods and they can see this other path that's possible, they don't understand the potential and what they're missing out on.
So it sounds like you guys are really tackling something. You're taking on a much larger animal, which to me is not the food industry. It's the government and the pushing on the media outlets of having cereal for dinner, you know, just from the, you know, a almost billionaire saying you guys should just have cereal for dinner. That is, I don't know if you saw, that was the Kellogg CEO or the individual, one of the guys that owns one of the major cereal companies, went on and said, you know, you guys should just have cereal for dinner then. I mean, we know there's poison in it. We understand the dyes in the food are causing a lot of these neurological disorders that children are then put on a massive amount of pharmaceutical intervention for. Furthermore, if you didn't get healthy, think about over your lifetime, how much money you would be worth to a pharmaceutical company.
Totally.
Literally millions of dollars.
But banana
I'm a
levels.
great customer.
You're a fantastic customer. But that's interesting to me too. You're both athletes. You had the stereotypical college experience where you drink and, you know, all of the stuff. But I just, really? Because you seem like you come from some families that are, you know, was diet an issue in your families? Was health an issue in your families growing up? Was this maybe a learned behavior like most people have? Like, we don't know better till we know better kind of situation?
I think we both had very conscious moms growing up.
Yep.
I would attribute it to our mothers. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like, just like skeptical and aware of what's going on in the world and wanting to do what's best for their kids. Like, I'm one of 4, so my mom was like always cranking out food, and she did her best, and I think she was following mostly like the government guidelines on like what to put on the table. So it was like skim milk and you know, we ate like high protein diet, but I look back and like she was definitely the one who was like, food is really important. You need to like fuel yourselves with the right things. And even if she was making some choices that, looking back now, I'm like, Mom, you shouldn't have been doing skim milk. Come on, let's go.
Yeah,
but you know, like it's part of the whole conversation, which is like, this is information that's being pushed out there by like special interest groups or corporate interests that eventually leak into government, which I think a lot of people think that those two things are very separated. But as soon as you have money to start to put behind creating influence and driving an agenda, it's very easy to capture people who are in power and who have significant amounts of sway when it comes to creating legislation around what you should be eating, what you shouldn't be eating.
Right.
In like the 1970s was when the U.S. government put their guidelines out, and that was the first time ever a government had recommended what people should and shouldn't eat.
And that's terrifying when you think about it. I mean, at the time, nobody realized it was a red flag, but the government telling you what to eat right off the bat, in my opinion, should have been one of the biggest red flags.
Yeah.
Because
Definitely.
they have no business. In my opinion, look at our health ministers. You tell me, have you been able to point out since, you know, COVID, any healthy, in shape, well put together health ministers? Because I haven't seen one that's not morbidly obese. I'm not even being trying to be disrespectful. I'm being very genuine. If you look around at the health ministers and the individuals that are working in conjunction with these food companies to make the restrictions, the guidelines, if you will, as to what Americans and Canadians and others should be eating, these are highly unhealthy individuals.
Yes.
You would think that, from my perspective, objectively looking at who's making some of the decisions around health, that they were actively trying to make you distrust what they're saying. Like, the people who are telling you how to be healthy are like the lady who's in charge, or man who's in charge of the health decisions in the U.S., the health minister, is like out of shape, does not look healthy. No. And, you know, I don't know, like, how are you supposed to trust someone who's not really able to follow that guidance by them, like, for themselves? my first red flag.
It's like doctors as well. You walk into the ER and I'm sorry, but if you're a doctor that's overweight and unhealthy looking, and I understand that profession has 18, 20-hour days and they're long stretches, and I get it, and you can't always be the healthiest, but then riddle me this, Batman. Why are all the other doctors that I know super healthy, six packs? They have families, they have multiple children, they're surgeons, and they make time to go run and work out. Why can they do it, but you can't do it?
100%. Yeah, I put out a tweet maybe like a year ago, and I think I said I'm never going to take health advice from a non-jack doctor before.
Right.
And it took a lot of heat, but I think common sense, just we don't have common sense when it comes to nutrition anymore. And it's like you can quote me every PhD scientific study that's telling you that red meat is terrible for you, but if you can't even manage your own body weight, why am I going to listen to you about that? Because you really don't understand what you're studying.
Right. And that's what I mean. It's not to throw shade at these professions. It's to look objectively at who is making the decisions for our children and who is manipulating, because that's what it feels like, this mass manipulation. I'll give you an example. Before I came on your guys' show, which you guys should definitely go watch, I started trolling people on Instagram in a nice way, but over protein. And people thought it was funny. But what I found out really quickly was how many people didn't know about the nutrition facts of, say, eggs and bacon or turkey bacon or steak. They would say, well, why would you eat more of that? You're killing more animals. And it's really bad for the environment. And it's not good for your health. When we know that protein is one of the best things for your body. So it does feel like there is this excuse that we're uneducated, that we don't know enough, we don't have the data, but yet we have one of these in our hands every 5 seconds. So is it an excuse, or are people just being lazy at this point?
I think there's a tremendous amount of gaslighting to draw people away from their gut intuition around what they think should be true and what's not. And it makes people doubt themselves and doubt kind of like, you know, if they're making the right choices. And like, if you're eating food and it's making you fat, you should probably understand that like the relationship with your food is the problem and the information you're getting is probably not right.
Right.
So I think like the camps where we both come from is like we experimented with food. We understand this like unique relationship that we have with food, and it does drive a lot of the health outcomes that you end up having in your life. And so like for most people, I just think that they're getting told things, and there's a lot of deception. One of the things that we talk about with food is just the distance that's been created through, you know, the source of the food, where it's coming from, and the end consumer has created a lot of space for deception to get, you know, put out there, whether it's through companies or through government. There's just plenty of room for people to label things and say things that aren't necessarily true. And unless you actually like go do the work for yourself and try to figure out what works and what doesn't, you're really not going to be able to trust like the intuition that you might have.
Yeah, I think the goal is, the mindset should be like, you should become your own peer-reviewed study, right? So for me, it's like when I took my own health into my own hands, it's like, try telling me that red meat is bad for me when I was literally shitting 30 times a day. I started following this diet. Now I'm healthy. I'm off of all my drugs. I'm the only patient in my doctor's history that's ever gotten off of these drugs before. So it's like, try telling me that red meat is bad for me when I did this so consistently, and it actually worked for me too. And also just have the common sense to think about the fact that if the government is telling you to eat 8 to 11 servings of whole grains a day, and 70% of the population is overweight or obese, yet we've thrived on meat for 2.5 million years, how is meat now killing us over the last 50 years? It doesn't add up. It doesn't equate. It doesn't compute to me.
Well, it's not just meat either, right? We've become devoid of this. I had this conversation recently with someone else, and it was very similar. You know, we're really devoid of actually it was a Laura Longley from the Boneyard, and we were talking about children need to be outside. They need to be dirty. They need to be wet. She has a tiny little human right now. And I said, like, how are you going to raise this child? And she was very similar to the way I was raised, where go outside, I'll see you later. And then I think that's so important. And that comes back to, you know, yes, our diets are garbage. We know that, human garbage. But it's so much more than that. We've become devoid of this connection to so many things, our families, the earth, God, name it. We're completely on this other stage where we act as if we don't need each other. Like, we don't need human connection. We can eat food from a box, and we can watch TV all day, and we can never go outside. And then we wonder why our populations are drastically sicker every year that goes by. And then you have people like the Canadian government who are actively and are, there's a new story that came out today. I'm still trying to digest it. They are actually targeting and killing people at a rate that is, we're surpassing every record possible. So people are depressed. People are on more medication than ever. And yet we are removing everything that we need to be, what it means to be a human being on the face of this earth for the past thousands of years. So I've thought a lot about what I want to talk to you guys about. And, you know, there's literally a million things on both of you separately, together as one. But what really struck me, last time I was here, you know, we got talking in the gym and we were having this conversation, and it blew my mind because I was surprised how deep you went with me like that quick. And I was like,
Like
oh.
5 minutes.
We were like a sip of espresso deep.
You're like, oh, okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about God. Let's talk about your guys' faith. Let's talk about what God means to you, what God is to you, and how God has helped you both, what I would argue become the people that you are now. So whoever wants to go first, you are welcome.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where to start this. I mean, I grew up in a family, I was telling you, have 3 siblings. We went to church. It was something that, I don't know if my parents had like the relationship that I do now with God, but I think they tried to teach us the importance of having God in our life and like spirituality. But it definitely, to me, felt like I didn't really understand the nature of like who God is and what it means to follow Christ. And so like I graduated from high school, went to college, did the whole thing, was drinking, partying, drugs, you know, having premarital sex, like basically the things that fall outside of the scope of what someone who's following Jesus would do, right?
Right.
So it took me a while to like figure it out, but 6 years after graduating, came down here and got introduced to a triathlon coach who's had a huge impact on Brett and mine's life. And she just took us up after one track workout. She was like, let's go grab smoothies. Just want to talk to you guys, get to know you guys better. And she gave us a nudge after me having spent like this period of my life not having any faith and not really like identifying as a Christian. She was like, hey, like, are you guys faith-based? Like, what's your like spiritual stance? Like, where do you guys stand? And it was, I think both of us probably had similar reactions where it was like, yeah, like kind of, but like, you know, I hadn't been to church in like a bunch of years, and it was totally like not a part of, it wasn't a part of me at all. And so, you know, I think that looking back, that was just definitely a turning point moment. I had recently quit my job, was making some big life changes, had just gotten out of a longer term relationship. And there was definitely, looking back, like these moments where it was like taking more risk allowed space for like this idea that like maybe I needed to grow a lot more spiritually as a person. And so I was like, yeah, I'd be interested in going to church. Like, sure. So I end up going to a church and see the pastor there, meet the pastor there. It turns out he was a guy who showed up religiously to her run group. And so I got to run with him, meet him more. And it was really just a different perspective on not even religion. I don't even really want to use religion, but just a different perspective on what it means to be a Christian and what it means to have a spiritual background or like spirituality in your life. And it just struck me like, I just need to like keep showing up to this. I don't know why, but like, I'm just going to keep going to church on Sundays and just, it just feels like this is the place where I need to be. And having gone from the corporate background to entrepreneurship, there's a lot less structure. So like, maybe this is something that can create some structure in my life that will, you know, for better or worse, or, you know, however it ends up, like it'll have a positive impact on me.
Right.
And, just showing up there and building a relationship with a pastor who's, you know, it's only 100 people at the church that I go to or that we go to. Just developing a relationship with a guy who really has had an incredible journey of his own, was a drug addict from like 12 to 20, got clean, now has an amazing family, 3 kids, and someone who has true spiritual power. Like his presence and how he navigates his life, there's so much strength because his identity is rooted in Christ. And there's something that, you know, I don't think I would have been able to listen to what I just said like 5 years ago and be like what is he talking about? Like, but at this point in my life, I'm like, this guy is able to navigate life for better or worse, the hard times when his church during COVID basically came down to like 2 or 3 people, and got through that, continued to pour into his kids, continued to pour into his community, continued to just be a stand-up person. And you're like, what's driving that?
Right.
What's driving that person to that level of commitment to what he's doing? And so I think just the relationship that I built with him was something that actually made me realize there's big pieces of my life that are missing and that I need to like address that. So yeah, he's been, Scott is his name, the pastor. He's just been a huge influence in both of our lives. And the way that he's been able to pour into us, we started going to this small group and understanding what it means to not just like go to church on Sunday and call yourself a Christian, but actually like get into a group with a bunch of other people who are trying to figure things out in life, talk about hard things, talk about relationships, money, all of it through the lens of God and through the lens of Christianity, and like dig deep on those things. And that space was like where it just like God spoke to me in those moments where it was like, this is like how you need to reshape your identity and how you need to like actually start living your life. So from there, got rebaptized, and just slowly have started to just try to continue to learn more about what it means to be a man of God. And I think like right now it's the anchor of like everything that we're doing. It's the thing that we fall back on when we have those tough days. It's just the basis of our weeks. And I don't think we would be where we are without the presence of that in our life.
It sounds like, before we get to you, if you don't mind, it sounds like, and maybe this is just an outside perspective, so bear with me. It sounds like what you were missing was a community. Definitely
Partially community, because I would say like my job when I would show up to it previously, it was like, I'm like, this is kind of like job Harry, and then there's like a Harry outside of my job. And then, yeah, like I think as an athlete, when you lose community and you lose your team, you definitely go through a bit of an identity crisis. Right. But I agree with you, and also think there's like a layer deeper to it, where it's like community, and then how do you show up in that community to provide value to that community, and what kind of like standards are we setting for ourselves within this community? And it was just empowering to realize that there's something like that. Like I had never experienced what I experienced through joining this community and being a part of it. And there was just a certain level of like, there's these people from all walks of life, which was a different aspect of religion that I grew up in, because it was, when I was younger, it was a very homogenous crew, very much standard socioeconomic and standard looking types of people. And so when I show up to this church, it's diverse and has all sorts of walks of life who are showing up to it. And we're all kind of there for the same reason. And we're all believing the same set of beliefs. And there's really something empowering to that, I think, because you get to share perspectives from all across different places, different experiences. And we're all talking about the same thing, which is like, how do we grow in our relationship with Christ? Right.
And it seems like as you become deeper in that, it's not only filled this void, if you will, for you, but it seems like it's given you a solid base to hold yourself accountable, to show up for others, to be this better person, and maybe lean more authentically into who you are, rather than having a separate this guy here and then this guy here. It's like, you're all one. You just needed to find a way for it to meld, it seems like.
Yeah, a sense of identity.
Right.
Which, yeah, I think a lot of times it's easy to drift away. Like, you could be a good-hearted person, but if you don't have that set of values that is like, I am going to follow like just these principles, and I can study these principles and actually become better and grow in a relationship with what these principles actually mean and how I can apply them to my finances, my relationships in business, my relationships outside of business. Like, all these things are in isolation, very different, but when you can weave it all together and actually make it like very one and very integrated, I think that's what I felt like I was missing, where it's like, how do I just like show up as the same person across all areas of my life and fully be able to fill up all the different cups that I'm trying to fill up.
Right.
Yeah.
And with God, you found that. You feel like you're really in a good place with that.
Found it, and I'm constantly working on what it really means. Like, there's just, it's an onion. Like, I think the more people that I've invited into this like community that we have, and the more times I spend talking about it. Like we host a men's group every Tuesday.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
That's
fun.
awesome.
Yeah. We've had some just incredible conversations about life. And I think like without it being centered, like, you know, men's groups are great, like
Right.
no matter what setting, but when the setting is like, how can we all just improve ourselves in the
Right.
same context? I think gyms do a good job of like
Yeah.
kind of being a parallel to that, but just this idea that, hey, we're just gonna like go for a run, come back, sit down, talk about what everyone's going through, and then we have like some topics that we're like dive into. But yeah, there's just a lot when you are actually hearing other people talk about their experience as well. Like you come to realizations that maybe you hadn't fully experienced and or fully understood just through somebody else's context of
Right.
what they're going through.
Well, if you're open, right, and you're willing to be vulnerable, you're not only going to see where other people are coming from, but you're also going to realize that you're not alone,
Yeah, definitely.
and you've never been alone in it.
Yeah, like this morning, one of our buddies, I hope this isn't an overshare, but like
No, it's not.
he was just like, yeah, I'm thinking about quitting my job and doing this whole entrepreneurship thing, and basically like 3 to 5 other dudes in the group are all doing their own thing, entrepreneurs. And he's like, I'm like really struggling with this decision. Like, what did you guys do? Next 45 minutes was just talking him through like that feeling of getting up against the edge of the cliff and taking that risk and not understanding that, you know, you can only see the first step, and then the full staircase isn't fully illuminated yet. But just being able to provide context for him, like what he should be thinking about, how he might be feeling, and just things that worked for us were, it was just like this amazing conversation that we ended up having for the next like hour or so.
But that's beautiful because you guys are, you know, I use this analogy that we all are walking through the dark together, but somebody has to be the bright light. And when you get to the end, you have I believe personally, an obligation to turn around and walk backwards to light it up for others. And that's what you just did right there. You know, that right there in itself, if he didn't have a place to put that energy to talk these things through, he might have just stayed in this job that maybe doesn't make him happy, doesn't fulfill his soul, doesn't give him what he needs. But because you basically held the container for him, you gave him the space, and that's what you two do so well. And I told you that before. It's unmatched. You guys show up in a very different way, and maybe that's where that comes from, is that base with God. I mean, like I said, you and I had that chat. We all had that chat last time I was here, and you were talking about non-denominational churches because I told you my background around religion and all of that. And I was grateful to hear you say spirituality too, because for me, it feels like right now there's this weird, strange division line happening where I've heard people say, well, spirituality isn't a connection to God, and God is completely separate from that and devoid of that. And I could not disagree more with that statement. I think spirituality and religion, I think they're the same things. I think a lot of times we just get stuck in these boxes. We keep putting each other in these boxes. And I think I like the term spirituality better than religion because it allows a fluidity. It allows an acceptance of other things and what sets your soul on fire and connects with your soul and your spirit, right? Because that's what it is. We're all spirits. We're all souls. What you believe may be the same thing I believe, but maybe the way you say it doesn't hit with me, right? It's like how some pastors really resonate with certain people and some bore you to sleep. And, you know, it has to resonate. It has to hit. And I think we're ultimately all speaking the same language. But because I burn sage, I've had people who are very religious tell me I'm a witch. But I'm like, but I'm sitting and talking to God. Like, what words are you saying? I also just work with energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's just very different.
Yeah, they're these people that create these very black and white lines, and they don't allow for any like commingling or mixing or anything. And I think it's ultimately about like finding what combination makes you feel the best, that allows you to be the best version of yourself,
Right.
and just applying that combination in your own life too, which is why I think finding the right church or whatever that vehicle is for you to find God is the most important thing. Like Harry was mentioning that he was raised Episcopalian. I was raised Catholic. I think of these denominational churches, they put like the wrong taste of God and Christ into a lot of people's mouths, which is what we talked about when we first met, because like denominational church is very much based on rule and ritual, and it's not focused on relationship with Christ. So like you're going to church, your parents are forcing you to be there,
Right.
you're bowing, you're standing, you're kneeling, you're praying, you're getting communion, you're going home. You don't really understand why you're there.
Right.
When I think a really good non-denominational church is just focusing purely on your individual relationship with God,
Right.
and the forgiveness of sin, which is like, we're humans, we're all sinners, we're never going to be perfect, we're going to continue to fuck up and make mistakes.
Right.
But the concept with non-denominational Christianity is that Jesus ultimately died for those sins too. And it's accepting the fact that you're going to continue to sin, but you're going to learn from it and just be the best person that you can be to serve the world as best as you possibly can too.
And sin is a dark word. And so I always wonder about that. You know, I talked to Candace about this on the show the other day, and we were talking about, you know, like, I think she stated, like, you know, when the Bible, it's like every child is born of sin, like with sin. And I was like, I don't think so. I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Do you think sin is like embedded into you by the world?
Yes, I don't think you're born. I think when I mean, I've pushed a human out of my body, and I have to tell you, there's nothing but light and purity and innocence and the divine when that child comes out of you, and you feel it leave. So I had a vaginal birth, and so when you feel the baby leave your body, there's nothing more pure. And the idea of sin, and I'm like, I think objectively humans, everyone does have sins, but I think that's kind of the world does that to them. I think it comes to them. I don't think children are born with it. I think it's what happens in the world. And I think that I don't love telling kids that they're born with sin, because then you're automatically setting a negative onto their mindset, because children can't fully understand that. I truly don't believe, because again, I'm a big believer in, you know, the brain stops growing at a certain point, and up until that point, you're always changing and moving. And I don't know that children could grasp at that age. And I feel like if I told a child that, you know, you're born with sin, they're thinking, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong?
Yeah.
When you did nothing wrong, baby.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a weird one for me. There's a few other things that are definitely weird for me, but that one I always push back on, because if you've witnessed a child come into this earth, there's no sin involved in that.
Right.
There just can't be.
Yeah.
But I understand I understand what they're trying to say, that no human is devoid of sin.
Yeah.
But I just think that comes over time.
Yeah. Maybe I wish I had a better interpretation. Maybe they just mean too that, like, maybe you're born pure, but like no matter what happens, like sin, because of being in society, like you will sin ultimately. So maybe something like that.
That hits a little more. That makes a little more sense to me. Again, I'm not somebody that studies the Bible, so I can't, you know, break that down more. But that would be my interpretation. But I think saying that a child is born of sin, I'm like, oh no, it's not.
Yeah.
Until they poop all over you. That's a different conversation. But for you, God's been, I mean, I see it. I see when you both speak, it is very different. It is not, I believe in God in passing. It's really in your soul.
Yeah. It's like when you have that, I think everyone has some type of a breakthrough moment at church. I think a lot of times it's maybe even during worship music as well, when the band is playing and it's super powerful music and you can really feel God's presence over you. It's like, once you have that like warmth and that presence and you know that God is with you, it's like impossible to act as if he's not there, because you know that he's ultimately there. And my faith in God allows me to have faith in my business ventures and my romantic relationships and everything that Harry was just talking about. It's like when you have that faith, it allows you to have faith in other aspects of your life. And that's what we should lean in on more. And that's why I would encourage anyone to just find some type of a spiritual discipline, right? It's like we do all have a God, whether we realize it or not. It's like you say you're an atheist, but you're watching NFL Red Zone every single Sunday. So you do have a God, whether you realize it or not, right? And I think for both of us, when we were early in the journey, when we started going to the church that we went to, we said, regardless of what we believe, all these people that are here are people that we genuinely look up to, and they're happy. And for me, it was like, when I was first on this journey, I'm like, if I'm so smart, why am I not happy? So like maybe these people that have this great spiritual practice and this relationship with God, maybe they actually know something that I don't. So I'm just going to be open-minded, and I'm going to go and I'm going to show up and I'm going to learn as much as I possibly can and then make a decision. And then I think for both of us, it was like our lives are way better off having accepted God and Christ in our lives. And it's up to you to make that determination.
Right. I think that's really beautiful. I'm a big believer in waiting until children are older to make that decision, because I've seen what happens when we just automatically roll it through the family.
Yeah.
There's no connection. And that's like, a small tangent. That's what the conversation was before, right? Was like, you're like, do you believe in God? I'm like, yes and no, but yes, ultimately. And when I say the word God, this is it's like a test you can do with people, right? It's there's a name for it, but essentially it's like your body will respond negatively or positively towards things. I know there's a name, but why can't I think of it off the top of my head? Anyway, so God for me, when I used to hear that word as a child,
Yeah.
right? And it just meant, this guy that hated me because I wanted tattoos and piercings, and this God that hated me because I was seeing things with my eyes that other people weren't seeing. Like, I used to have this little girl in my, like, long story. We'll get into it sometime. But there's this, I was told I'm bad because these are the things I want, or I'm bad because I'm not doing what, the Bible says. And I remember in my religion class, because Catholic school, the whole semester was built around, you had to read the Bible and you had to pick 18 verses, then you had to break them down about what you thought about them. And I remember at the time I so badly wanted my belly button pierced, and my parents were like, hell no. And like, for context, my father's he was not religious, not Catholic, but my mom was, so they were married in a church. And my mom said to me, if God wanted you to have it, you would have it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna find some stuff. And I found some stuff in that Bible. And it was like, I can't remember the verse, but I remember it so vividly. And I can't believe I still remember this. There was this girl that was sent down from the sky, and she had holes in her body, and like painting and drawing, like basically drawings on her and all of these things. And I remember going to my mother and being like, holes in body.
Yeah.
Holes all over her body. And it wasn't like, it was like piercings. That's what they're, and so it was this whole kind of conversation, and then it was justified, and then it was okay, and then I could get it done, and everything was fine. But there was this moment in my life where the word God really just represented the church, and not the good version of the church, like the really nasty version. And I asked this to Candace the other day, and I'd be curious to know your guys' thoughts, and I feel like I know where it's going to go, but I'm curious. From the Catholic Church perspective, that's what I was raised in. I'm really good at forgiving. But they make it hard. So how have you both been able to I don't say overlook, because I don't think anybody's overlooking it, but nothing's changing and nothing's being done about it. So I guess we're overlooking it. How have you guys been able to see some of the things that the church has done and represented and move forward with that and not just be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I think we actually talked about this morning in the book that we're reading.
Okay.
And the subheader of the chapter was the poisons of religion. And even Jesus himself, the reason that he got persecuted was because that he healed on the Sabbath, the day that you're supposed to not be working. And he got persecuted by the religious leaders. So I think there's just a distinction that needs to be made for people who are maybe on the other side of the fence looking in, being like, I just don't relate with this whole God thing, or I don't relate with Christianity. It's not about like the church. Like even Jesus, throughout the Bible, it talks about the religious leaders who are creating a lot of the problems by setting this legalistic standard of what it means to know him and know God. So I just think the distinction is really understanding who Christ was and following Christ versus the institutional aspects of religion that allow for things. It's kind of like the same conversation with food, is once you get further away from the source, there's lots of deception that can be displaced in. And I think that's no different than religion either.
When you can take advantage, somebody will always take advantage.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think to Harry's point, something that was important for me, and I still kind of drill this into my own brain, is like, it's important to not equate like human error and flaw for God.
Right.
Because a lot of our, like, we call it church hurt or like negative experiences, or
that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah, or someone being like, oh, you can't have piercings because you're a Catholic woman. That's not God. That's a human misinterpreting the Bible and saying that you can't have those certain things too, right? It's like Paul wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. Paul was formerly Saul, who was he was literally killing Christians.
Right.
And then ended up going blind, had a vision of Jesus saying, "Why are you, Saul, why are you forsaking me?" Went on this whole Christian transformation, became Paul, one of the most brilliant Christian men ever. And it's like, I think that story is so relatable because it's like, that's what God does, is he can take the worst of the worst and turn you into the best of the best too. But a lot of the issue is that we equate human error for God. And I think those two things are very distinct and very separate. Does that make sense?
No, 100%. This is why I wanted to break this down, because I'm like, oh, you two would be the best. I've thought about a lot of this. You two would have been the best in my opinion. And that was because of the experience we had, because I think that word, and that's what kind of sparked this conversation. When you sparked that conversation with me, my brain was on fire and I was thinking about my relationship and what those words mean. And because right after I got home and then my son asked me, "Mom, what's God?" I was like, karma. This is karma right now. And I just looked at him and I got down to his level and I looked in his eyes. I said, "You're God. And everything around you is God. And that water flowing is God. And that tree out there is God. And that bird that just landed there is God. And the bees outside are God. And we're all God. And it just means to be a good human. It means to show up for others. It means to love yourself. It means to be kind to yourself. Because when you're kind to yourself, you're kinder to others. It means to help somebody when they need help. It means to not, turn a blind eye when somebody's saying, "Hey, I can't do this." It just means to show up very differently. And he just looked at me and went, "Okay." And lived his life. And it didn't overcomplicate it. But I can't lie. I can't lie to you. And I was very fearful of that day. Just like I'm very fearful about, he's going on 8 Santa and Easter Bunny. I'm like, I think this might be the last year. So I'm really cherishing those moments. But, I want my son to have a connection to something greater. He understands that mommy does psychedelics and mommy goes sits in the jungle. And I do have to say, when somebody says, once you do ayahuasca, you can't unsee the mountaintop. And what they're really speaking about, if I'm being completely honest with you, is that's when you realize there's a divine. Because you sit in the presence of that divine. Whatever people want to say, religion has a ton of psychedelics based into it. The same way the 12-step program used to have psychedelics based into it, when you could take back your own authority and believe in yourself and not just put it onto someone else. And psychedelics have had a massive base in religion, but we've kind of washed over it because I don't think people really believe that. And when you read, you start to understand, well, there's a lot more in here. There's a lot more in here. And when you actually sit with medicine, you really, it's overwhelming. I have a video the last time I did medicine, and I was hysterical the moment Aya, God, walked in the room. Because I so desperately needed that conversation with her, because she is grandmother ayahuasca and she does show you everything and she makes you feel connected. And I had felt so disconnected there for a little bit. And when I went again to go and sit, I just asked that I could talk with her again. And when she showed up, you literally, like, it's that moment where you are in the presence of creation. And once I started that conversation and I started talking to you about that, it made me realize that there's nothing to fear with the word God. There's nothing to fear.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And it doesn't have to mean what it meant for me as a child. And it doesn't have to mean what it means for a lot of people. It can mean what it means for me. And the second I started leaning into that, and same to your point, was the faith in God, the faith in work, the faith in your relationships, the faith in your friendships, the faith in your community, it bleeds over. And it allows you to be this better person, but in ways that you didn't know you were fully capable. And to just trust. We were just having this conversation at the house and you're like, "No, it's a matter of time." I'm like, "Bro, I don't know why, but like, it's in my bones and I feel crazy right now," because I'm like, it's right there. And you can feel and have trust and faith in these things, but you don't have to be able to see it to have trust and faith. That's kind of what it means to have trust and faith in something, it feels like.
Can't be explained through like a data set or an algorithm.
Right.
It's just like this beautiful intuition that God gives you as well.
Right.
I would be curious for you, could you ever get to a point in your journey where like, could you get that same feeling in worship at a church that you could be on a mountaintop with ayahuasca? And I don't have an answer for that. I don't think you have an answer for that, but I would be curious if you could ever get that feeling.
I get that in meditation.
So it's possible.
No, it is possible for me. No, what I would say is that when I started using medicine, it wasn't the intention was to create with God. It was to work through serious traumas. And what I didn't realize in that time was that when I was working through the traumas, I was being held by something greater. And the medicine is grandmother Aya. And so I knew I was being held by the medicine, but what I was devoid of at the time was that the medicine comes from God. Right? It's the chacruna leaf and the Aya plant. Well, where do you think they come from, girl? But I wasn't thinking that far because I had such moral injury around that I couldn't allow myself to go to that next step and go, but it grows from the earth, therefore it grows from the creator, therefore it grows from the God. You know, so I don't know that I'll ever be the person that goes to church into a building because I found such deep connection when I know this is really cheesy, but I found a lot of deep connection that when I'm working with my clients, I feel like things are flowing through me. I feel it when I'm in meditation. I feel it when I sit down and I'm not even working with medicine. But when I ask for the conversations to start, I just had this conversation with I call her my spiritual advisor, but she's a medicine woman. And it's like a screen door, right? And the door is always a half moon open. So I can hear and I can see other things people don't want to say they can see, but I can. And when I drop in, that goes like this. And everybody gets really loud. And I say, one at a time, please. And then one steps forward and we have conversation. And then the other steps forward and we have a conversation. And I can't tell you, but you guys were such a big catalyst to this deeper thinking for me and this thought processes. And it's been so different over the past 3 months. Like since we spoke, you sparked a different depth of thought into this and like curiosity. And so in sitting with that, the way I've been developing this year, the trust has been radically different. It's like, you know, when you know, but I've been texting you and I'm like, so sorry, but I've been texting you and being like, do you ever just like feel these moments where it's like there and you know these things are there and they're happening and something's going on in the universe? It's just like shifting and you're like, yeah, obviously. Duh.
It's just
It's God.
But it's just this incredible intuition. And I think the more you lean into it, the less you question it. You just trust, like you said, which is such an amazing thing. And again, I think God powered us with these amazing forms of intuition. The other thing too is as part of our men's group, we just started reading this book called Beautiful Outlaw, which kind of redefines who Jesus actually is. Like in the Western thought process, we kind of like overly feminized Jesus in some ways. Like he's a pacifist. And he's really kind of like this, like he's like this badass, like tender outlaw. Like not and one of the things that it talks about in chapter 1 is it talks about like how do you actually encounter God, and it talks about actually being out in the world that God created, not in a box like you mentioned, not talking into your box or staring at a blue light screen, but actually being out in nature. And it sounds like a lot of those experiences that you've had are probably similar to the experiences that we've had too, of like going on a walk, being at a mountaintop, being with the people that you love. That's where you're probably most likely to encounter God. I mean, I worked, God, this show is not about me. You are good. I worked with a client recently. I know. God, focus group, focus team. I worked with a client recently and I was on a Not Dead Yet retreat, which was really amazing. And we were climbing Mount Helena in Montana. Helena, thank you. I'm just never sure how to pronounce that. So we just go. I actually don't even know. I just so confidently said that. I
was like, he has no idea.
I love that you know he had no idea, but you went with it anyway. That's a good friend right there. And everyone took off on this group, and I had this. I just ended up walking with this one member of that was there, and her story was one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed. She was. I don't think she'll have an issue with me talking, but I won't say her name. But she was 300 pounds, and she wanted to get to the top of that mountain. And it was snowy, and it was deep, and it was like, we're gonna do this. And first 5 minutes we got into it, she just broke down. She's like, I can't do this. I said, not with that mindset, you can't. I'm a little bit harsh sometimes. And we softened her up and we worked on it. Anyway, we got her moving, and we would go 10 steps at a time and then take a break, and then 10 steps at a time. And it took us 3.5 hours. And everyone was on their way back down when we were still climbing up. And I saw the defeat in her eyes as they came down. I said, no, head down. We are so close. And when we got her to the top of that mountain, the belief in herself, the joy in her heart, it makes me emotional, because it's like when you see someone believe, because I know she is a child of God, but when you see someone have faith in themselves, it's life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
And to watch her experience that, and then to have her come down the mountain, and we walked into the house after, and everyone was there, and I was like, hey guys, I just want to reintroduce you to someone. She walked in and she goes, hi everyone, I'm so-and-so. I'm a motherfucking mountain climber. And I was like, that right there, being able to bear witness and guide a human for how I did absolutely nothing, but I was there. It was just enough. It's to not be alone in these hard things. It's to have networks and people around you, like your group, to show up for each other, to give these opportunities for growth, these moments where otherwise, how are they going to learn?
Yeah.
Like you've walked the path now. You guys are uniquely qualified to go backwards and help others walk that same path. So for both of you, how has this affected you emotionally? Because the Bobbsey twins live together, and I feel like there needs to be a whole series. I want you to recreate Step Brothers for me, just some of the scenes, please.
We're already doing it every day.
Yeah,
Okay,
literally,
perfect.
we just need a camera.
You just need a camera, and I'm sure we can sort that out. But how has this relationship affected you both individually and together? Because it seems like you're brothers. It does truly seem like you two are on a path together that I don't think you could have gone alone. You're both great, but together it's a different thing.
Yeah, it's like 1 + 1 = 15,000.
A million.
A million.
Yeah, a million.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, and I'm sure you feel this too, I've been having a lot of days where I just wake up and I almost like question, you know, am I actually this lucky to be able to live these types of days, you know? And I know that feeling of, you know, being in New York City or working a job or just kind of feeling like my life was passing me by and being terrified of that. And I remember that intuition that you talked about, feeling like I was meant for something so much more, and I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know what that was going to look like or what that was going to manifest itself into. And when you really feel like you're living in alignment with that purpose, it's just it's the best feeling. Like being able to wake up every day and say, this is the life that I dreamed of years ago. And I actually see this picture that's being painted for me by God, and being able to have like a best friend who's also your business partner. I think both Harry and I realize how lucky we are to be able to have these experiences and build this business. And I think we also have this mindset of like, you have so much time, but you also have a finite bit of time. And what I mean by that is like, I think we both genuinely know in our soul that we'll be working together forever. But this period of time where it's like you're single, you don't have kids, we're scrapping to make ends meet, we're living in the same house, our office is 2 houses down, we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay employees and do this and do that and have this crazy vision in our head that people are going to laugh at. Like this period of time is such a small period of time. So it makes you want to maximize, like not every single hour, but every single moment, every single minute. It's just such an amazing thing that I wish a lot of people understood that they too are capable of having those experiences. Like I had all the capabilities 3 years ago. I just didn't have that internal belief that I could, which is why I'm so grateful for Harry, because I think he kind of instilled that belief in myself, which is what a great partner does. I think a lot of us think, oh, I need to have the right business plan and then I'll find the right partner. And I actually think we maybe think the exact opposite of like, when you find the right partner, you can go do whatever you want.
1,000%. 1,000%.
So that's how I would answer that question.
What about you, my friend?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even really know how to put into words like the journey that we've been on the past 2 years, just being able to experience basically every step of the way together. And I couldn't imagine. It truly feels like we've condensed 40 years of growth into 2 years, just being able to guide through these, like, just frankly, like challenging moments and wins, being able to actually experience that with somebody else and like plug in and just like want the best for each other because like we're working for the same mission. I just remember the life before of like not having a mission, not having a higher purpose, and thinking about what we have now. I just like try to pull gratitude into every single moment, even the moments that are like, you know, you're looking at a situation, you're like, this is just objectively bad. But like, then you're like, well, is it? Like, what is here for me? What can we learn from this? And I think about the things that we're going through now that are hard. I'm like, this is going to make us insane in 20, like this will make us like so much better in 20 years. And for Brett and myself, I just feel like certain parts of us have just blended together in some ways, having lived together, do over 280 episodes of the podcast together, launch a business together, a separate business together. And there's so much growth in going through these things together in a way that's like like we've fundamentally changed as people because we've been able to experience together and invest in each other in a way that I don't think a lot of people get to experience, where like you have someone who's fully investing into you and they're going to call you out on things and they're going to push you, and you're just going to have like an open window into somebody else's mind where it's like, are we seeing this thing the same way? So I'm just like incredibly grateful for these past 2 years. Like I just think we're living in our divine purpose, and there's just like an amazing sense of gratitude with each and everything that we get to work on and all the challenges, ups and downs. It's amazing. And like, yeah, I don't think there's anything that replaces a true fraternal bond. Like a brother in arms, someone who's going to pick up the sword with you every day. Those days when you wake up and you're like, all right, like would love to go back to bed, would love to maybe like not have to face these things. And when you have somebody else who's just attacking it harder, attacking it in a way that like you're inspired to do the same, it's like oil on fire. Like it just like it is an inferno. And I think that we've both kind of lit that in each other. Like, yeah, Brett's just forced me to push myself in ways that like I didn't even think I was capable of tapping into. And there's just so much that I think these past 2 years, there's just things I'm like, I can't wait to like teach my son this and like pass these lessons down. That's the thing I'm just like so grateful for. Win, lose, or draw, whatever happens with all the things that we're working on. It's like we've been through something that has given me life experience that I want to like pass down to my son and daughters and share with my wife at some point. Like all of these things that we're learning are just real experiences. And I think for a while I was just not getting those.
You know, it's really interesting with you two when you talk about family and growth, because you guys are both in this unique position. Your other half lives somewhere else. Do you have another
single
half? He's single. That mustache is single. So how do you think that's going to develop over time? I mean, you guys are going to have tiny humans. Are you guys going to be the people that live side by side and homeschool your children? Or are you going to allow them out into the world?
We might. There's so many people that homeschool in Austin.
Oh, dude, everyone homeschools in Austin. So you could hypothetically just make your wives friends.
Yes.
And then you guys could have shared backyards, and you guys could have your wives homeschool, and then you guys could just world dominate.
We could. That's a great thought, Kelsi.
I'm just thinking ahead for both of you, because this is magic in a bottle. So realistically, you guys are growing something that's going to stand the test of time. So how do you do that? And how do you face these challenges of, you know, what if somebody's spouse wants to move here and you guys can't live together anymore? Is it going to be the same? Are you still going to be able to be as connected? But because you guys are so unique, it just seems like it's going to cause a bit of a shakeup. And I don't think it's going to be negative, but I'm just curious to see how you guys are going to handle this. Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out the right way to articulate this, because I want to be careful, because I think it is really powerful. I think that the biggest thing that Harry and I have learned, because we have a lot of friends that are young that already feel like they're wilting away inside, right? Because they're kind of just living, however they're living is not how they're ultimately called to live. And I think they know they have more potential inside of them, but they're not accessing that potential. So it feels like you're dying the slow death, even though you're like 28, 29 years old. I think what we've learned is, I think we picked a target. We were lucky enough where we picked a similar target, and we were like, we're literally just going to shoot at this thing, and we're not going to look back at all. So I think that if most people just sit and meditate, they can kind of figure, I think most people know intuitively what that target is.
Right.
The hard part is like shooting at it and being like, I'm not going to stop until I hit this thing.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's hard, is there's no hack. There's no book. It's literally just like, I have to just do the hard thing and burn the ships and accept the fact that there's probably going to be a lot of pain associated with that until I actually hit that goal.
Right.
I think that's what the last 2 years has been, is like taking something like this raw piece of clay and refining it to something beautiful. And we're still in the process of doing that. But part of me saying that is, I think Harry and I have enough trust where if Harry wanted to move somewhere or I wanted to move somewhere, I think we've developed such a base that even if we're not in person all the time we are now, we would still be able to operate at a really high level.
Yeah.
But I think part of what we learned through shooting at this target is like your universe is very malleable and you can kind of bend the universe to your will and what you want. And I think we're both in the mindset of like, we want to be able to raise our families together. We want our wives to be friends. Like we want to craft that ideal experience with our families and have our kids be friends together. So I think it's this blend of like flexibility where if someone does want to go somewhere else, we're going to have like lock sync communication, but also I think we have this ultimate vision of being able to just be in the same area forever and like have our families be integrated and be super close and kind of be like one big family in a way.
So when you're dating, is she also being introduced to the wife to see if they'd be a fit right off the bat?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
If Dana doesn't approve, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dana's got high hopes for Harry.
I'm optimistic for you. I know who I'm going to get a text message from after this one.
Nice.
A lot.
So,
A lot of women.
Oh,
He's an eligible bachelor.
Is an eligible bachelor with a mustache like that.
Yeah.
Look.
But one of the other things I really respect about Harry too is like since I've seen him turn to faith, he has like uncompromising values with the partner that he wants to be with as well, which I think is such an important thing. And I think you know it with your husband.
Yeah.
And I'm experiencing it with my girlfriend Dana. It's like when you meet that, like you should not I don't think you should compromise on anything with that ideal version of your partner, and they exist. And I think that's something that I see with Harry as well, where it's like shoot for the highest caliber that you can. Like you have one shot, like go for the best partner that you can.
Yeah. There's no, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You get told we're not a fit.
Yeah.
I mean, I get told I'm not a fit all the time.
Yes.
It's fine.
It's just part of the journey.
It's fine, Harry. No, it's fine. You have to, it's part of the journey. But also, I think ultimately when you're staying true to you, that right person will show up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like when you know, you know. Like I fundamentally believe in that. But to answer the question that you originally asked, I think one of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently is just finding spiritual mentors who can help us navigate some of these harder decisions. Like what happens if you guys like are in two different places?
Right.
But I come back to what Brett said. It's like when you find someone that you actually like genuinely just like trust and want to do life with,
right?
Why would you not just like I almost feel like it's just a pull instead of like pushing it. Like we're just being pulled into this life that we have now where, you know, we're just trying to hit that target. So both of us see the same objective and we'll compromise. We'll continue to like find what that middle ground looks like. But I firmly believe in finding people who can guide you through hard decisions and people that you trust to lend some advice and people that you can confide in. And I think keep that group small. But like if you have a really good group of mentors, they can help you guide through that. So like there's just people I'm seeking out in town who I'm like, hey, like, can you help me figure out how I can like set stuff up with Brett so I can invest more into him so that we're both just like continually to be on the same page? Because like I think we would be naive to think that like what we've built so far is amazing, but it's only going to get more complicated. It's only going to get harder.
Yeah.
And like the bigger things are, bigger opportunities are going to come down the road.
Yep.
And like this will be a conversation I come back to check myself and be like, yeah, you just got to like, as long as you're committed to the same thing and you guys still like are in agreement on like where you want your lives to go, you know, you can always make it work.
Well, let's talk about mentors then. That's a great, God, you guys are good at this. Easy transition here. Let's talk about mentors and the importance of having them in your life, because I have one right now that I'm in love with and I am learning. It's been 4 months, but what I'm learning from her is mind boggling. It seems like it's simplistic. It really is. But when you have somebody who's, you know, 30 years older than you walking that path and has done all these super hard things, it's invaluable. At least I have found for me. So what has that been like for you guys?
Yeah, I've referenced this way too much, but like when I was going through the whole experience in corporate America, I didn't really feel like I had that person that I'm like, I want to model my life after that person. And so finding people who I can pull things from and start to like really see a vision for what a really good life could look like has just been incredible. So like Scott's one of those people, our pastor. You know, I try to keep the group of people who are giving me advice to the people that I'm like, I will model my life after that person. And the reason why I trust Scott to the level that I do is that he has a firm identity in Christ, which is like exactly like, you know, how I am and how I'm seeking out to live my life. So I think it's important, and like, this isn't just for people who are listening to this, who are Christian, or, you know, this is for anyone. It's like, find people that are living life the way you want to live it, and seek them out and do what you can to pull them into your arena, because yeah, there's nothing that can replace good mentorship, especially when it comes to like these big decisions that actually have an effect on your life.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot about if you put mentors, teachers, coaches in a similar bucket, you think about playing sports as a kid, how important a coach is, learning in the classroom, how important a teacher is. You just graduate and then those things kind of dissolve. And I thought that always just sounded weird to me. I'm like, why would I not continue to try and seek these things out if they help me accelerate so much as a child? I probably need that even more in adulthood when I'm 18, 20 years old, trying to figure out how to navigate the world. And I think it's super important for women, also super important for men too. My dad has always been someone that has always just led by example, he would never like say the exact words of the things that I needed to do. He always just did the right thing. So I feel like I silently observed from him too. I had some amazing coaches. And then to Harry's point, I try and keep that bucket of mentors, coaches, et cetera, really, really small, because too much input can be very difficult to actually be distracting. Right. But putting myself in the situation of, is this person living life in accordance of my terms of like where I want to be when I'm 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and just using them as like your trusted circle of confidants and being willing to be vulnerable with them, talk really openly about your challenges and be willing to listen as well and ask for really good feedback. That's a big thing too, is like being willing to get the difficult feedback that you might not want to hear, but you actually need to hear. That's something that's helped me a lot, is soliciting that difficult feedback.
I think that's such a really important point. Not a lot of people are willing to hear hard things about themselves. And I, you know, and the other thing too about hearing criticism about yourself, you have to take inventory on who's giving it to you.
Yes.
Right. Because sometimes, like, for example, I was given some recent advice, and it again was, we're on the different side of a holy war. And I was like, yeah, I don't take that seriously at all. And then I hear something from my mentor who's like, hey, why don't you try this instead of this? And I was like, that was so good.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I hear it from her because she's in alignment. She's walking the path. She is where I want to be in 30 years.
Yes.
So I can understand the importance of that. But I think most people will solicit advice from yes men. And that's what happens when you start to become a public figure or somebody in a space. People, they surround themselves with yes men. So how's that been for you guys? Because you too, whether you feel uncomfortable with this or not, are very big names in this space. So how has that been as you've elevated upward?
I think there's maybe a couple different levels to it. Something I've thought a lot about the last year is like never wanting to be that yes man friend. So it's tough because Harry and I have so many different aspects of our lives interwoven that it's tough to sometimes give business feedback because we're also really good friends and you don't want that to affect the friendship.
Right.
But it's like, if I'm worth my weight in salt at all as a partner or as a friend, like I need to be willing to give this feedback to Harry, not because it's personal, but it's because I want him to be that successful that I'm willing to say the uncomfortable thing.
Yep.
And I know he's the same way too. So I think that's a great challenge, is to like, if you feel like you're in that yes man bucket, get yourself out of that as quickly as possible and say the difficult thing, because that person on the other end of it might really need to hear that thing as well too. And I always, when I take feedback, I really try and detach as much as possible. Like I literally pretend like there's like a third party vantage and I'm watching the person give Brett feedback, but I'm not actually Brett. So that helps me kind of pull my ego out of it, because at the end of the day, we're all in this thing because we want to be the best versions of ourselves. We want to be the best possible human that we can be. So if this person is taking their time to say the uncomfortable thing, number one, I respect them. And number two, I should listen to them because I genuinely want to get better from this feedback.
Right.
That's why they're giving it to me. They're not, if someone's giving me that feedback and I'm listening, I'm assuming that they're not saying it because they want to just hear themselves talk or give me some piece of feedback I don't agree. They're choosing to give me that feedback because they want me to become the best version of myself possible, which is why you have to kind of have that pre-vetted mentor pool, because that's implying that they're going to give you that really good feedback. And then it's your obligation to just like shut your mouth and really listen to what they're saying and then like reflect on that and then absorb and utilize that feedback in your own life too.
Yeah, finding people who can actually give you honest feedback is really hard. And I think that when when someone's giving you feedback from a genuine place, and whenever someone's giving you that feedback, I always think that like the best coaches were kind of unafraid to correct things. And when you hear that, just I try not to take it from a place of judgment, like what Brett's saying. It's like, oh, don't get defensive, but just use it as it's their opinion, or it's like, it's something that they're giving to you. They're trying to improve you. They see something that's happening in your life that maybe you're not seeing. And it could just be a good, either like a small learning lesson, or it could be something that where you're like, wow, I really need to like reevaluate that. So yeah, I think feedback is just like tough to come by. So when you find people that you trust who are going to give it to you how it is, it's like the best thing you could possibly ask for. Like the feedback loop for when you mess up, like generally, you know, like when you've wronged someone or done something wrong, but having someone to be like, dude, come on, like you gotta do that better, or like, you know, you're not taking enough time for yourself to like show up fully to whatever we're doing. There's just I think a lot of instances where people are afraid to say the hard thing, and it's important, like you said before, to like create space for it, schedule it. Like I think a lot of times when we get in the moment, we don't want to hear things, but if you design your week where it's like, hey, Fridays, we're going to catch up and just talk about what we could have done better as a group, individually, and then give each other feedback. I think that's when it's like the most powerful, because you're actually both committing to wanting to take that step together, as opposed to just like, you know, some random feedback that somebody's throwing your way.
Absolutely. I think that's why, like you said, coaching, mentors, whatever it may be, are really invaluable.
Yeah.
Especially, I feel like in a world where we're bombarded with data and information at rates that our brains clearly are not absorbing.
Yes. I think you genuinely need to commit to who to listen to and who not to. Like, just define that in your own way. Like, there's just so much noise out there. If you read every comment, you'd be like manically depressed, sad, hate your life. But if you're only minding, you know, what people say from people that you actually have a relationship with, that you care about, then you're rooted in something where you're like, okay, I know these people, I trust these people, they say something, I care, I'm going to try to commit to doing it better next time, or whatever it is that they say, whether it's good or bad.
It seems like the people that become the most successful, at least lately, are the people that are most grounded and normal. Normal. We were just talking about normal people. How some of these people we know that are just normal people, not trying to be a thing, but are just ending up as the thing. It just seems like it's innate, it's built in, it's meant to happen, it's not intentional, but they're there, and it's just boom. And it does seem like it comes from the most grounded, regular, hardworking people. And it seems like all these other people that are around that are just like trying to climb these ladders, it's unfolding.
Yeah.
Rapidly.
Yeah. Well, I feel like genius is really just a byproduct of work ethic, right? Like I always remember, I go back to this book Mastery a lot by Robert Greene. His most famous book is The 48 Laws of Power, but I think his best book ever is Mastery. So he basically breaks all the principles down of how to become a master in the specific field that you want to get into. And I remember his chapter on Albert Einstein was really interesting, because we equate Einstein with being one of the most brilliant minds of all time, genius, gifted by God, etc. He was kind of an average guy, like middle of the road, thought about this theory of relativity, toiled at it literally for like 6+ years. It might have even been longer than that. And then actually gave up on it because he couldn't find an answer. And then all of a sudden he was on a train, had like a lightning bolt of inspiration, figured that out. And then the second that he came out with that, everyone is like, oh, you're a genius. So for me, it's like when I think about grounding, it's like followers mean nothing, influence means nothing. It's just like being a really good, hardworking person and sticking with something over a long enough time horizon, and amazing things will happen. Like the more that I read about like really successful people that have built something amazing, it seems like it all comes back to that groundedness and just that work ethic and doing the unsexy things super, super well. The Founders Podcast is my favorite podcast to listen to, because
I've tried to get on that. I love that show.
Really? Do you yeah.
You try to get on.
It's so good because he just breaks down biography after biography, and you see all these same traits between these men and women of influence. And it's like they just picked a problem and just fucking worked at it until they figured it out.
Well, I think that's part of the problem, right? Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur until it comes time to be an entrepreneur when no one's watching.
Yes.
And you have to be ruthless and relentless, and you have to grind until it hurts, and then go a little bit further.
Yes.
And that's if you're even wanting to scratch the surface or make a difference or a dent. I think that's the biggest picture is people like the idea of I'm an entrepreneur. It's sexy. No, it's not. It's never sexy.
Yeah.
I live in sweatpants unless I'm traveling. It's not. I wash my hair once a week. I don't sleep as good as I should. It's not sexy. It's hard. It is one of the hardest things. And we go through these stages. And I want to talk to you guys about this because you two just are, I've seen the growth. So I know that there's got to be these moments for you that have happened. So, you know, we go from one point in our life where we're trying to do these things. And as we start to climb up to what it is we're trying to achieve, there's a gap in there. This loneliness gap. And maybe it's because you have each other. Maybe you don't feel it. But there's this loneliness gap where now, and I love, everyone laughs at me that I use this analogy because I think he does it better than everyone else. But Snoop Dogg illustrates it like the cleanest. Like that's a dream guest for me. That guy's a trip because he is so much more depth than people realize. But he's like, it's not my responsibility to come back down to you once I'm here.
Yeah.
It is yours to climb up to me. So when you're walking that path and you're on your way up there, have you guys experienced these lonely patterns where other friends are dropping off, where you get the must be nices and you're kind of at these stages where, I mean, you have each other to look at. It's like, hey, like you're being a good person, you're doing the right things, but you just outgrow. You outgrow because you outwork. Where, like I said, most people aren't willing to outwork. So how's that been, and have you experienced it?
I mean, for sure. I don't know if it's necessarily, it's just, I think you start to feel like you've become a little bit unrelatable because the problems become more complex because you've basically torn down all the walls. You're not just like working for somebody and collecting a check. You're like literally just trying to scrap and make things happen and make ends meet, and you're faced with challenges that you never would if you weren't an entrepreneur. You're just like you're faced with all sorts of different obstacles and things that, you know, maybe you wish you didn't have to deal with, like having really hard conversations with people that you've partnered with or having to fire someone. It's like these things are all like very they're common, but you feel like they're kind of all, like when you tie them all together, they're all uniquely you. So I think there's definitely moments of isolation where you feel a bit on your own, but there's power in too. And I think that the ability to just always kind of like raise things with each other and be like, yo, I'm actually like, you know, dealing with this and not really sure like, you know, what's going on. Like, I think that there's always like an open line of communication between the two of us, which is helpful. But yeah, it's hard. It's definitely hard. There's definitely relationships that have kind of come and gone. People that you like have known for a while that maybe are just like, you know, a relationship that you come back to. But I haven't, I don't know. I haven't really dealt with like any people who are like it's been like too tough of a conversation or anything like that. So.
Yeah. To Harry's point, I think what we've both done is, whether it's like consciously or not, like you almost bucket your friends in terms of like, hey, this is someone that I've known since I was a kid. They're always going to be someone that I love and I'll always have a relationship with them, but they're not necessarily going to elevate me to that higher level that I want to be at.
Right.
So I'm not going to jump on a call or text that person every single day. But when I'm back home in New Jersey, for example, I'll still seek out time to be with them. Maybe it's like once a quarter or a couple times a year because I love them. I care about them, but they're not necessarily elevating me to that person that I want to be. And I think the goal is to add as many relationships that are going to elevate you to that higher level as well, because whether you realize it or not, it's like you just are a byproduct of who you spend the most time with, right? It's like, it's why you chose the husband that you have. It's why you chose the friends that you have too, because you know they're going to push you to that level that you could never normally get to on your own. And I think it's really important to like very consciously recognize who are those friends that are like your ride or dies that will push you every time you're with them, versus the people that might yes man you, or they're just kind of engaging in those old behaviors of like drinking, being on social media, just working a normal job or whatever, and like kind of creating that separation between the two. And then also not super tied to what you're saying, but you kind of made me think about it. Like on this journey towards success, I think I do a good job of tunnel vision, of accepting the fact that we have a very unique trajectory and journey that we're on. And comparing yourself to other people is not going to be a good thing. But something that I still do struggle with is like, I see someone that was maybe just on the trajectory that I was supposed to be on, and in the short term they're like doing better financially just because they're getting a consistent paycheck, where everything Harry and I is doing is very inconsistent, right? Where it's like some months are great.
Right.
Other months are like, hey, I just paid all the employees. We didn't have a great month. Guess what? I'm not taking anything home for this month.
Right.
And sometimes that does sting in my ego. So I try and really consciously keep that tunnel vision up. And I actually had a coach that I opened up to about this, and he was saying, you need to be even more selective with the tunnel vision that you have, because those people are playing a very different game than you are. So you trying to financially compare yourself to someone that's stayed in this corporate construct versus you trying to build something out from scratch, when year 0 to 5 is obviously the most difficult, that's not going to serve you at all. So not super tied to the friendship thing, but it's like something that I honestly struggle with and continue to struggle with too. And I think I'm getting better at it, but I think that's something important to open up about, that people should be aware of.
Well, and I think it's really important, and I'm glad that you did, because people are on different trajectories, and we play this comparison game versus social media. Like everyone compares with each other, whether it's innocently or not. You're looking at numbers, you're looking at so-and-so, you're looking at this, they're doing that, or how to get that. It's like, it's going back again to pull the energy back in, pull the threads back in, put it back here, and go forward. Because the more, and that's the thing people don't realize, right, is if you're talking or thinking about somebody else, there's an energetic hook onto that. Mel Robbins talks about this, right? There is when you take and this is the other side that people call the woo side, but when you put your energy to something and you think about it, nobody catches on, but there's an energetic hook there. And you choose how close you want that energy to be or not. And it's almost like a thread or a trajectory. And so that's why when people say, when you think about negative things, more negative things happen. It's like what you surround yourself with, you become. It's because there's our laws to physics, and there are energies, and this is what happens. So when you're thinking of something negative, or you're in a situation maybe with somebody that is an older friend, or somebody you thought was a good friend, and you have that energetic hook, and you're disappointed, or you're frustrated, or you're constantly comparing, your energy is drawing that way.
Absolutely.
And then it's derailing you. It's absolutely derailing you. And I think people forget that. And so it's like, unhook, pull it back in, and refocus, and then drive forward. And so for people listening, I mean, what are some of the tools you guys use to stay as grounded as you are and to be as focused as you are?
I know it sounds super cliche, but I just think the morning workout for both of us is just such an anchor that we try and stick to every single day. Like I've gone through versions of my day, and this has nothing to do with like, because people will be like, oh, you should get 8 hours of sleep, you should work out in the afternoon, whatever. I focus on exercise purely from the mental and spiritual benefits of who I transform as a person after that workout versus the physical. The physical benefits are just like a byproduct of me doing the right thing.
Right.
I just find that like I love the energized feeling that I get after a workout. I love the way that I show up. I feel like I'm more tenacious. I'm a better business partner. I'm a better friend. I love more, whatever, from the workout. So I just try and structure things into my day that are going to make me feel like the strongest version of myself, so I don't give in to some of those negative hooks that you're talking about. So like a really good 8 hours of sleep, but I'm putting my phone away before, and I'm journaling, and I'm reflecting on my wins for the day. And then maybe I'm reading a chapter of a book that I want to read, and then I'm going to bed. I'm kind of like, my subconscious is baking on all the wins from the previous day. So I wake up and feel super energized, and then I go get a great workout. It's like, that's incredible. And then you compound that with like putting the right nourishing ingredients into your body.
Right.
That is a home run formula. That's why we do what we do, because by us incorporating those habits into our routine 5 years ago, it transformed who we were as men, which is why we have this business now. That's why we're so passionate about this stuff, because I know what it feels like to eat shitty foods, to drink excess alcohol, to not take myself seriously, and go to bed at night feeling like an absolute loser.
Right.
And I know what it feels like to do the right things and be able to like build the life of your dreams too. That's why this stuff is so important, because it seems so unsexy, but those unsexy things are what are going to make you incredibly successful over the long-term time horizon.
No, 1,000%. I couldn't agree with you more. What about you?
Yeah, I think the only thing I could add is just writing. I think writing is this amazing way to just funnel through thoughts and just keep me like in this space of trying to slow down a little bit, because it is so easy to get overwhelmed when you have a lot of things going on. And writing is something that doesn't take much time, and it usually for me has some sort of like hidden gem in there where it's like just something to just stay focused on. It allows me to clear up my thoughts and get oriented around like how I'm feeling. So I think writing is just one of those practices that is pretty irreplaceable for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's really fantastic. Let's talk about some meat. Let's talk about your friend real quick. So your friend started a meat company today. Trevor.
Oh yeah, Man Bar.
Man Bar. Love the name.
Such
What
a
a
good name.
great name.
It's such a good name.
Yeah, it launched today. I'm really excited. I'm going to try some meat after this. I'm really excited about it. I'm not going to lie. Super excited for my meat stick. But so meat, protein, obviously diet change. That's what drove a lot of this. And then, wanting to see, combat these voices in the food industry, having a show that you guys can dive a little deeper in. And to be completely frank with you, most of those people that I know that actually specialize with all the letters behind their names, they're not up on the latest things. They read what they read in school and then they stop learning. And I see that with a lot of doctors or people with a ton of letters is they're exhausted from learning. They're exhausted from reading papers. So I appreciate that you two are not a million letters behind your names. It's like you're doing this because you genuinely care. It's not trying to make a full profession out of being a doctor or a nutritionist in this space. So let's talk about, meat, and then let's talk about your protein company, please. Tell me everything. How did you decide to start a protein company?
It's such a good question. Something Harry and I ask ourselves all the time.
Every day.
Yeah. But there's this really cool thing that you're experiencing yourself that it's like these media companies are almost becoming product companies at the same time. And what I mean by that is like, instead of just launching a business, I think what's actually more scalable and makes more sense for a lot of people is to just start building something that you're passionate about on social media. Get those eyeballs, build those 1,000 true fans, and then your audience will actually tell you what product you should be launching. And you can obviously totally do it the other way too. Loads of businesses have done that. But what we did was we were super passionate about the food system. We didn't understand why the average American is only eating 2 ounces of red meat, why 65% of our calories are coming from ultra-processed foods, why 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. It's like I can go for on and on. But we're so passionate about wanting to just teach people what the right foods are.
Right.
And the big commonality why our name is Meat Mafia is that if you just get a gram of animal protein per pound of body weight, your health is going to absolutely flourish from the micronutrients, the saturated fat, all the goodness that animal products actually provide to you. It's so much simpler than we make it out to be. So our thought process was, okay, well, we have this podcast, we're interviewing these experts, we're teaching people about nutrition. Why don't we actually create something that's really in line that people can consume too? So you have the media angle where you're teaching them and then you're actually giving them something that they can utilize in their day-to-day life.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
You're providing
Absolutely
a tool. A tangible
Yeah.
tool to change their life.
And so many of our listeners were saying, hey, what quality protein powders and supplements do you recommend? Especially for women too. Like, right? For men, it's so, like for Harry and I, it's like I can eat 2 steaks a day and get 200 grams of protein, which is what I'm going for. It's hard for women to eat 2 huge steaks a day and get their adequate protein intake. So supplements and powders are huge for women. The problem is that like 99% of protein powders that you see on the market, like Ghost is a good example. You need like a PhD to be able to decipher the ingredients that are on that ingredient label too.
Well, we talked about some really famous ones last time I was here, and I was kind of shocked what was in them after I went back and looked at them.
Ghost Nutter Butter flavor has like 5 different seed oils in it.
That's
it's like, why are you?
It's like,
why
is
is
that
it a
in there?
protein powder and has 5 seed oils? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
So we were like, what if you could make something that's super nutrient dense, has the highest quality ingredients, but also tastes delicious too? And that's how we came up with Noble. So it's kind of like an animal-based version of Athletic Greens where there's 25 grams of beef protein. So the protein's not from whey, it's not from vegetables, it's from the muscle tissue of the cow, which is the most bioavailable part of the animal. And then there's a whole grass-fed organ complex in there. There's colostrum, there's collagen, all these parts of the animal that we've eaten for thousands and thousands of years that we've kind of forgotten about the last 50 years. We wanted to put that into powdered form, but also make it taste delicious too. And that's how we launched Noble, is we just took our audience feedback and we were like, let's build something that's best in class and let's just give that to the public as like kind of like a net good in some ways. So
And it's good.
it's you've tried it, right?
Yeah,
You've had it. You ordered it.
Yeah, I ordered it.
Yeah.
I order things.
The one thing I was going to add to that too is I think one of the things that Brett and I were really excited about with the product is that it could be a bridge product where a lot of the people that followed the show early on were really in love with the show because we were talking about this purist way of eating, and there's, real foods and then there's processed foods. And so many people right now are struggling with getting away from processed foods. And the conversation is being swayed in all different directions. And one of them is just like vegan proteins and plant-based proteins are better than animal proteins, and that's just something we fundamentally don't believe in. And also, like, the research and studies support that animal protein is more bioavailable and easily digestible for people. So we're really designed to be getting this protein into our diet. So if there's a product out there that exists that can play in this space of helping people start to eat the right way, start to orient people in the right direction, it could be the first thing that gets them starting to think about incorporating more animal foods into their diet. So we just love the idea of it being a bridge product and something that will hopefully steer people in the right direction. And like you said, that tool, like, there's so much, you can listen to all the podcasts in the world. You're not going to get healthier just by listening to the podcast. You need to start incorporating things into your life. So this is just hopefully one of many things that we end up launching, but
I'm sure
I think it's great. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting too, because what I love about powder is you can introduce it to children.
Yes.
You know, this is
Get
me
Jack
just
on the gains.
Yes, Jack's on gains. Jack's on
Jack.
gains. He's on gains, and he's also on a vitamin one because the doctor's like, he doesn't eat enough vegetables. I'm like, honey, he eats better than everyone in this hospital right now. Relax. And it's amazing the difference, because when he gets enough protein, when he gets enough water, and he sleeps enough, we're cooking with gas. It's like a different child. And I see what happens when you feed a kid. I've never done this to Jack, but I see what happens when you feed a kid Skittles before they walk into a classroom in the morning. That's the reality. A lot of people are dragging their kids out of bed because they're not sleeping. They're not going to bed early enough. They're not sleeping enough. And then they're struggling to get to school. They don't want to go to school because they're so exhausted. And then they feed them a bunch of sugar to bring them up, or give them the pills so that they're relaxed in class and numb for the teacher. Like, it's this cycle. So I love powder, because powder is something you can put in a kid's smoothie. You put literally some mangoes, a banana, and like some strawberries, and put a little bit of powder in there based off of his weight. And off we go to the races. And he knows it's in there. We're not even hiding it. I'm like, buddy, you got to have your smoothie today. Yeah, I need to get my vitamins. Like, this is a conversation with my 7-year-old that I don't think is very difficult to have with grown adults, but yet they're so reluctant. And I reached out to you because a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I'm bringing smoothies into the shop." And I was like, "Protein." She's like, "Well, I'm going to do a vegan one." I was like, "No, you're not. We're going to talk about this." And that's when I text you, and she was like, "Oh, I'm interested in this because it's the digestive component, right?" And so that's what I asked you. I was like, "What's in it?" Because some people, I struggle with whey. Like, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
We are not friends.
For a lot of people, whey doesn't sit with them. And like, we love raw milk, but with whey, it's kind of this byproduct where you're taking these like really industrialized cows that are probably hopped up on hormones. They're probably fed corn. It's not a ancestrally consistent diet to what a cow is supposed to be eating. And then you turn that into milk, then you process it, you turn it into a powder. There's all these steps from like real milk to actually getting whey protein powder that just doesn't digest well in people's stomachs. So we we over-index on the gram of protein, but if it doesn't sit well in your stomach, you're not actually digesting that protein. That's where the bioavailability comes into play. And that's why we use the beef protein isolate, because you're just taking the muscle tissue of the cow and you're turning that into a powder, and something that it's an extremely gut-friendly protein powder. And you do such a good job with Jack, because I think as a parent, it's
we try really hard.
Right? And there's only so much you can do, but it's about making it fun. So like a lot of Noble parents that give Noble to their kids, if you blend Noble chocolate with milk and give it to your kid, he's going to think it's chocolate milk if you don't tell him what it is.
You already do it.
Yeah. And even like you can take grass-fed yogurt, throw a scoop of the chocolate in, throw a little heavy cream, mix it up super well, put some like paleo granola in there. It tastes like a chocolate pudding.
Right.
So, but he's getting organs and he's getting protein, and it's going to fuel him for the day.
Right.
So I think a lot with parents, I'm like, does your kid have ADD, or did you just give him Skittles and now he's trying to sit through history class?
And that's honestly, and I'm a judgy parent for that. And people are like, "Kelsi, you should be better about that." I'm like, yeah, I'm working on it. But here's why I'm judgy. If you don't show people where the gaps are, if you don't bring it up to them, and they are the people who just don't know, who are only raised on cereal and raised on, Pop-Tarts. And don't get me wrong, when I was overseas, me and those Pop-Tarts were my jam. I had them for a little bit, but I couldn't gain weight to save my life because of the heat. So doesn't matter. But my point is like, if you don't bring the stuff up to parents, they're never going to know. So the least you can do is go, "Hey, this is a gap that I saw, and this is how I do it. This is a gap that I saw in our family. I don't know if this could be beneficial for you, but we saw a big change in our child." And I'm a bit, people hate this, but I don't believe in ADD or ADHD. So like, I'll give you a great example. I was doing my TED Talk that is not being published, by the way.
Shocking.
I'm going to drop it this week.
Yeah.
So I was doing my TED Talk, my TEDx, sorry. And there was a lady there, and her talk was on about her ADD and ADHD. And me being me, I walked into the room before we were getting ready to go, and it was Remembrance Day, so Veterans Day, and we wear poppies in Canada, and the Brits wear poppies, right? And so they dumped a bunch of poppies out for all the speakers to wear, and I was putting my poppy on, and she didn't grab one, and I looked at her and I said, "Are you going to put a poppy on?" She goes, "Oh, yeah." She rolls her eyes, puts it on. And I go, "What's your talk on today?" She goes, "Oh, my ADD and ADHD." And brain didn't filter to mouth. And I went, "Well, that's not real, so good luck with that." And then she had to go out and do her talk.
Oh my gosh.
And
How'd it go?
Well, my buddy whipped his head around and was like, "Real, Kels?" Like, I'm like, man, I'm done with people giving these labels to children and people when we know that there is a genetic component and what you put in your body can drastically affect your brain. Sure, you want to give the diagnosis. You want to get the diagnosis because there's racing mind and there's components to that. But can we talk about why we're having the racing mind? Can we talk about why that behavior is? What is the root cause of it? Because I'm sorry, it is a goddamn superpower if you get that thing on lock. I am like, by definition, every label in the book, I have never been told I was ADD or ADHD, but this brain acts accordingly. But when you get it in check, it's magic. It can be unlike anything else.
Yeah.
Totally.
I even wonder too, not to take you off track,
No,
but I
go.
sometimes wonder, Harry and I have talked about this a lot on the show, like how much misdiagnosed anxiety and depression maybe comes from like not fueling yourself with the right foods too.
So that was going to be my question with you before. And while we're talking about this, let's do a shot while we're chatting.
Let's do a shot.
Good call.
My brain is turning down. It's the end of the day. I don't normally podcast end of the day for a reason.
Cheers. Oh,
Well, you guys are so fast. I know
That
you're
was
supposed to like.
How'd you do that?
I know
lot
Michael
of
does it.
practice.
You were ready
too.
to go,
He's
huh?
so much stronger than I am.
Cheers, cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bam.
Awesome.
Clink.
That's good.
Oh yeah.
It's something.
No, 2 hours here. We got,
Yeah.
What does that give us?
We're at 2. We're at 2.5 right now.
So the ketone IQ will get us an extra 3.
Yeah, we're
How do we feel?
at a bare minimum. But I wanted to ask this before, and I didn't want to interrupt that conversation when we started, but I was curious about that. When you were really sick and you were going through everything with your misdiagnosis, that would never heal and you would never get better from, which is awesome thing to tell anybody. Oh, how was your mental health? Because we understand so much of your, was it 90% of serotonin comes from the gut health?
Something like
It's like 70
insane.
to 90,
Yeah.
I believe, some ridiculous number. So how was your mental health?
Yeah, the gut is like its own universe, and we basically know as much about the gut as we do about outer space. Like we're learning new things every single day.
Wild.
It's like I think when we look at human health in general, like 5 years down the road, so much of it is going to extend from our actual gut health too. So when your gut health axis is so out of alignment, like mine was, I think it's impossible to be in a good state of mental health. I mean, I had a lot of my identity at the time was wrapped up into who I was as a baseball player, and even prior to that, me getting diagnosed, like I did not have a good college career. I felt like a failure. And then when I was really sick, I didn't think I was going to be able to go back for my senior year of college. I thought I was going to be on these drugs for the rest of my life. I was kind of like this whittled down version of myself. But yeah, I really felt like a shell of who I was as a person. And then when I was able to kind of reclaim my health and my vitality, my confidence grew stronger, because when you go through that, you know, not that my adversity was that severe compared to what other people have gone through, but relative to me though, you grow stronger when you overcome something like that too, right? So I feel like the confidence that I come from now in the relatability to my story is being willing to go vulnerable and share that vulnerability and share the story of you overcoming that. But yeah, I remember sitting in the hospital bed just being like, am I ever gonna be the same version of myself? Am I going to be normal? Am I going to have to wear a colostomy bag because I might have to get like part of my large intestine taken out? You know, you think about all these things and you think about your future. And I just remember having that moment of just saying like, look, I'm not going to let this diagnosis define who I am, and I'm going to take my health into my own hands. And regardless, at least I'm going to have the confidence to know I did everything I possibly could to try and heal.
Right. And that was just food related.
It was food and lifestyle. Yeah, there was definitely a stress component to it as well. Every time I haven't had any severe flare-ups since I first got sick, but anytime I'm chronically stressed out, I know that that metastasizes in ulcers in my colon. So meditation is important. Prayer is important. Sleep is important. Like I think I sometimes maybe over index on nutrition because it is such a big lever to pull, but there's all these other things that are in congruency with the health journey. Like that's something Michaela Peterson talked about, where it's like the lion diet worked super well for her, but then she realized that there could have been other things with like mold toxicity. There were all these other things that she needed to pull on to get herself into optimal health. It wasn't just nutrition.
Right. No, and I saw that with mold as well for me with asthma when I was younger. It's a wild thing when you don't know that it's in the house, or you don't. It can wreak absolute havoc on your body. But I think the reason I pull at nutrition too as being such a big lever is it's also not just the nutrition you're giving, but it's also what level of inflammation it's putting on your body. Absolutely. And that's why I think nutrition is so much more than just food. If it can inflame the insides of the body, everything will fall apart. You will become radically foggy. Nothing will digest properly. You're not going to absorb. You feel like a shell of a human being. And that's what I'm trying to get others to understand, is that if you just stop drinking Coke and pouring battery acid into your body, it would be amazing. I mean, everybody knows a Coke will dissolve a nail. Yeah. We're giving it to kids in schools every day. And we're giving them these processed foods instead of making things just accessible, like allowing for a protein smoothie to be in a school instead of saying maybe we're not going to have chicken nuggets today, which we know aren't even chicken. So the diet to me feels like is the biggest catalyst. Stress is a massive one that's, I think, super overlooked because it's not something you can see. Yeah. It's just something the body takes on. Yes. And it absorbs in this weird way. But for children, like people, the first thing they'll point to, like they pointed to with my son a couple weeks ago, was like, we think it's diet related, what's going on. And I was like, no, it's not. And then they're like, well, we think he could be constipated. We're like, we did X-ray. No, it's not. And then they're like, well, how's his stress? And we're like, it's really good. The kid meditates and does breath work. Like, what are you talking about? But a lot of people miss that step. Children are growing up without a tool. They don't know how to emotionally regulate. And then they have parents around them that don't know how to emotionally regulate either. They're not learning any sort of pattern that they can take with them and, not be like that. So stress is just built into these children. Yes. Abigail, I think Schreier has a new book out. She was on Rogan talking about it. It's called Bad Therapy, like why our children are growing up. And it talks about stress in the home. And when you are a person who is constantly listening to the news, is surrounded by others that are struggling with the world, you're deep into climate change and deep into elections and deep into all of these things and COVID and masks and all of it, you create a stressful environment, and people don't realize that your children absorb everything. That's why you said your dad didn't say much, because you don't teach by talking, you teach by doing. Yes. So he didn't need to say anything. Yeah. Do the right thing, the right things follow. So for stress, you meditate, you work in prayer. Physical fitness, huge component. We understand it's 2 times more effective than an antidepressant over a long period of time. What else do we got? There's got to be more in the toolbox here. There's got to be something else going on, because you guys seem pretty, you seem mellow.
Too chill.
I think it's also,
and I know you're not smoking weed, so like, what are we missing, kids?
I think when I also will reflect back on the biggest losses or the things that cost me the most mental stress. And I had this realization, it was actually at some point this year, not super long ago, when I realized, like, every time I thought that the world was blowing up, it ended up resulting in something that was really positive. And I think it's like you kind of grow in proportion of the responsibility that you take on. Okay. So I think there have been so many moments the last year where Harry and I thought everything was blowing up, and every single time it either worked out, and if it didn't work out, it led to something better. That I think we kind of have this mindset of like, there's no need for it to be doom and gloom, because the outcome is not going to be doom and gloom. It's going to work out exactly the way that it's supposed to. So I don't know how you would integrate that into part of your daily practice, but it's something that I've just cultivated, where the problems that I think are bad are never really as good or as bad as they seem. They will just work out the way that it's supposed to. So I don't know if that's helpful.
Well, I think gratitude, you can't have anxiety and gratitude at the same time. So like, I think when you're able to when you start to feel anxious, going into gratitude right away is one of the best things you can do.
It's such an effective tool.
It's magic.
Yeah. It literally is like, if you, I think Elliot Hull said this, whenever he feels himself having anxious thoughts, he will immediately just start to do something for someone else.
Yes.
Where he'll like fold the clothes for his wife or do something for his kids. Like he doesn't allow himself to sit in that negative state. He just chooses to serve others because, like, number one, it helps other people feel amazing, but there's also this selfish benefit of like, you will also feel amazing as a part of doing something nice for someone else too. So if I know for me, if I'm on my phone, if I'm eating like shit, if I'm horizontal in my bed, that's when the negative thoughts are going to creep in.
Right.
So if I can just counterbalance that with doing something good for someone else, going for a walk or a run or exercise or go get coffee with someone I care about, like it's almost like you can't let it's almost you outlast the anxiety or depression. It can't catch you. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely chemical imbalances to depression and like food factors and taking action. And that's depression. I would argue is separate from anxiety. I think anxiety, it's like that old saying, when you're living too far in the future, you're living in an anxious state. When you're living too far, you're living in the depressed. And when you're living in the present, you're always, you're good.
Yeah. You know what's also amazing is when you do the shit that you're supposed to do, the anxiety goes away.
Isn't that amazing when you just take action on your life, how much better you feel?
Yeah, you guys literally just hit on all the things I was thinking
I'm
about.
so sorry, Harry. Harry's like, well,
I'm like, I was going to say something
shut
about
up,
presence,
Brett.
and then you talked about just like, being in the present moment. I sat through a really interesting conversation. It was a South by Southwest event last week. And it was this lady who works with CEOs, high performers. And she's talking about this framework just called the window. And on the upper side of the window, you're anxious, overthinking, like having disparate thinking. And on the bottom part of the window, you're kind of like in this depressive state, slowing down. But the window is when you're just like in the moment, flow state, feeling good, present. And I've been thinking about it ever since, because I do think it's that place where if you're operating from the present moment, you don't have those thoughts that are pulling you out of it. You're not slowing down and feeling depressed, and you do have a sense of gratitude. You're here, you're able to appreciate the company that you're with, what you're doing, what you're working on, whether it's hard, whether it's not going your way. At least you're here, present, doing it. And it's so easy to get pulled into the virtual vortex of your phone, start scrolling and have, disparate thinking and be anxious. But yeah, just like that presence and slowing down. And I think that is like a thing that you need to like effectively teach yourself.
Yeah.
But
it's a muscle.
Yeah.
It's a muscle, right? It's like that new, what do they call it? They're calling it like the God muscle in the brain right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you do hard things, you grow the muscle, but they've figured out, you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes.
It'll atrophy.
Yes.
So you have to do hard things.
Yeah, I think it's the smallest in obese people.
Right.
Some type of singular cortex. Huberman talked about that with Goggins. It was so good.
That's
I'm not even going to try to go into that episode. That's no thanks.
But for me, I don't know. I think this is pretty basic, but I have, like, for me, I just love having my like weekly to-do list for all the different buckets of my life, and that makes me feel good being able to see everything on one page. So Meet Mafia, Noble, personal stuff, like do my personal finances, get my car washed, get my beard trim, like just all the things that I need to. It just feels so good having it on one page. So then you can just see the things that you need to do and then check it off. And then another helpful writing exercise is sometimes I'll literally just sit pen to paper and I will write about the specific thing that's giving me anxiety. Why is it giving me anxiety? And then if I had a gun to my head, how would I get myself out of this situation? And you force yourself to create a solution. And then it's fear setting. You're like, okay, if it came to it, I can pull myself out of this situation. If I'm worried about money, here are the things that I could practically do to take my own power back and control this situation.
Well, because fear is the thing that stops anyone from living life. It kills more dreams, more hope, more businesses, more anything, just because people allow fear to control their lives. And it blows my mind. I get it. I'm terrified of a lot of things, but you just have to do them and realize it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's really not. Because once you do it once, right? It's once you do it once. I did this with Jack when we took him into the cold water in the ocean. He said he wanted to do it for weeks. I'll go swimming in the ocean with my U-Bummy in the winter. I'll go. Cool. All right, we'll go. Made a fire. You're going to go? Yeah, I'm going to go. Got his little half wetsuit on. I'm going to go. I said, okay, I'm going to go first. Okay, is that cool with you? And he goes, okay. So I went out, I did my thing, sat out there for a little while, and then I came back in. And he goes, Mommy, are you cold? I said, yeah, but it's okay. I'm fine. See? He goes, but you're really red. I said, yeah, it's not a big deal. We have the fire going. It's all good, bud. And he goes, okay, I think I'm going to do it. And I was like, are we thinking or are we doing? And he goes, I think so. And I went to go and he goes, no, I don't know. I don't think I can. I said, don't you start with me. You said you were going to do it. So we're going to do it. No, I don't know if I can. No, let's move. So we would start a mantra. And so what I've started to do with people is that when you get to the thing that you're most fearful of, or you get to the thing that you just like, there's no way I can do it. You just start talking out loud. I got this. I've got this. I've got this. And I will show you after the video of him doing it. He went into the ocean for over 6 minutes. He's 7 and it's winter. And he wanted to get to a rock. But you can hear him, even though the train's going by, and I don't let people see his face on social media. So you can hear him when he's walking back. I got this. I got this. I got this. But it got him through it. Because it's just sometimes you need to hear the words because we are the stories we tell ourselves. And if we tell ourselves we're going to be fearful, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be this, then it's going to be exactly that. Change the narrative.
Yeah.
You're in control here, people.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fun about you two. You've changed the narrative. And you're continuing to change the narrative. And the words you're speaking about food and health and diet and how you've come to where you are, because you're 2 normal guys that went to college and played baseball. And I don't mean that to like degrade it. I'm saying you are the American dream. You are the American story. You guys are like the thing that you look back and they write like the book on. They're like, I met him when I was playing baseball at school and we just looked at each other and said, why not? Like you are the American fucking dream and you're living it each day, but you're not looking to a thing and not appreciating along the way. It is the journey. It is never the destination. That is cheesy, but it is the most clear, most honest saying. It is not the destination.
Yeah.
It is 100% every step along the way.
Totally. I think that was one of the things that we would think about a lot, just seeing people who have had success and then they like sell their business or do whatever and then they're still not happy. And it's like, well, did they even enjoy the process of getting there? And
probably not.
Yeah. I think the moments that you can like future Harry is going to love like what we were doing right now because it was like, those were the moments that created us and defined the types of people that we were. I think that ultimately that's the best thing about entrepreneurship. It's like, it's just this sharp knife's edge that's just creating this person that you ultimately end up wanting to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I love, fuck, that's good. That's so good. I think that's like the best way to end that.
Let's go.
I think that's fantastic, man. Okay, well, where can people support you? How do they help you? How do they uplift what you're doing? And because truly you are changing perspective and you are changing the world. So I am grateful as a listener, as a participant in your products and what you do and who you are. I'm just live in gratitude in these moments, man. So
we're mutually grateful too. And you know, there's a lot, like we talked about, you know, when you're building anything, there's a lot of ups and downs, but the peace and the connection after conversations like this are what remind you that everything is worth it, right? Like the friendship that we have. And I think that's a good thing for people is like, when you use social media the right way, it allows you to connect with the people that you should most connect with too, right?
yes.
And don't just let that relationship sit online. Even like, you know, if someone you connect with someone in your city or you're going to be passing through and there's someone you follow or you've been DMing, like go get coffee with them, go do something, like go turn those social media relationships into real relationships. Some of our best friends that we've met were literally on Twitter or on Instagram or having conversations like this. Like the 3 of us are an amazing example of that too.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, which is such a beautiful thing if you use these apps the right way. There's so much opportunity. Like all 3 of our businesses were built on us just creating something, putting it onto the internet. Like look at you, like book, movie, jewelry company, all the other things, all was a vision in your head that you use social media the right way and turned it into reality. Like this, that's why your message is so relatable. Cause you're like, I know what it feels like to not like the person I saw in the mirror. And I also know the feeling of doing the difficult thing, like Jack jumping in the ocean and feeling so proud of yourself at the end of the day too. Like that's what life and everything that we're doing is about. But I think for us, it comes down to, 86% of podcasts are still spread by word of mouth. So
Yeah.
if someone could just listen to an episode of the Meat Mafia podcast and if they felt compelled to share it with one other friend or person, that would mean so much to us too. So Meat Mafia podcast, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. My Twitter handle is Meat Mafia Brett. Harry's is Meat Mafia Harry.
I love it so much, by the way. I love
Yeah.
it when I type it and it's just like, it's so obvious.
Meat Mafia Kelsi.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, we better watch out.
first
I
time.
fly down quite often. You don't make promises.
We
You want to
love-
be part of the mafia?
Don't.
She's Mafia.
Don't.
She's,
Yeah, I'm just like the violent side.
Yeah,
Y'all
yeah, yeah.
are like the
you
calm
need some,
piece.
I know, you're the arm. We need some
Yeah, I'm
violence.
the reach. I'm the
Yeah.
We need a little bit more weight behind the mafia with, you know, the harm that we can inflict. So we might
It's
have
fine.
to. We know you have a
She could
knife,
kick
maybe
our
a
asses
gun.
for sure.
Oh,
I'm working on a knife. I
I'm
need a
not
knife
messing
sponsor
with
in
Kelsi.
the worst
You
kind
need
of
it.
way. Oh, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
No, but for real. So everything's Meat Mafia on your Twitters. But how do they support Noble? How do they get a hold of this stuff? Because it's been a game changer. And I
Yeah.
love that you said Noble Kids. Like, is that a page you're doing?
We need to. No.
How is that
We just,
might need to get
not
on that.
like, because I could see like a Noble Kids where it's like there's a ton of homesteader families. There's a ton of people that some children don't like. I do find some children don't like the taste or the texture. Like Jack doesn't like bloody steak. Jack will eat a well done steak though.
yeah.
Right. So it's like sometimes it's about just getting it into their bodies to allow them to develop. So why not Noble Kids? I mean, where it's just a whole page of like free range, barefoot babies and protein shakes.
I think we
love
might
it.
have to create that handle like
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
I'm
gonna go
surprised
do
you.
it as soon
I'm
as-
genuinely. I thought you said it because you had it.
You're an ideas woman. I think you
I'm
gave us some
something.
ideas the first time we came
I
on
did.
the podcast too. I remember
Food
that.
for thought.
Food
Yeah.
for thought.
We
Food
named
for
our
thought.
newsletter "Food for Thought."
No,
Holy
you
shit.
didn't.
Yeah, totally.
That's
100%. We took it right from this room and
Yes.
Kelsey.
took it.
Magic.
Credit.
I'm so here for
Yeah.
now. You got
Yeah.
Noble Kids.
That's why podcasts and conversations like this are so effective because you just have new insights and there's just serendipity that come from things like this.
It's not serendipity. It's exactly how it should be right in the moment that it should be. That's just how it works. You got to
There
have
you
faith,
go.
son.
Yeah. Yeah, but nobleorigins.com.
Okay.
Literally chocolate protein, vanilla protein. There's organs powder as well too. Kind of like a nutrient super boost that you can throw into your smoothies. But yeah, nobleorigins.com and it should ship and deliver within like 2 business days.
Yeah, it's really quick. It is really
it's
quick.
quick.
And it's within the US, right?
Within the US and we ship international too.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah. I just shipped to my PO box, so it was quick. So I was happy with the service. I was happy with the quality. It showed up in its
We gotta
nice
send
white
you
bag.
more. We gotta send you more.
Nah, it's good, man. It's
Chocolate?
good. I fucking love the chocolate because you know what I do.
Chocolate's better.
I don't like a lot of. I don't like smoothies very much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, and I don't like processed. Somebody gave me some stuff from a major company. I won't say the name, but it was like it just tasted processed.
Yes.
I didn't really like it. So what? I make the same smoothie every day. I'm a creature of habit, by the way. It's bad. When it comes to diet, it's I'll take a scoop of protein and then I'll do a banana, which I don't like in real life, but I'll eat in a smoothie. And then I take a little bit of oat milk and then I take a big scoop of crunchy peanut butter and I put that thing in. And that is my jam for lunch every day if I don't have my eggs and turkey bacon, which I troll people with. But
Yeah.
I make sandwiches out of the turkey bacon with the egg in the inside.
Oh, it sounds insane.
That's how to do it.
I know.
Avoid the bread.
But that's how you use the smoothie the right way. For me,
Definitely.
if I don't have good quality food in the house, I'm gonna be so more likely to just eat something shitty that's out. So,
Exactly.
right. So it's like you have to actually prepare for this stuff. So that's what's great about Noble, like you're doing, where if you don't have time to make the eggs and the bacon,
Yep.
at least I can get a super nutrient dense smoothie that tastes really good. That's gonna give me what I need, so I can fight off the cravings for the bullshit.
Yeah, and that's what happens, right? That 2-3 o'clock. I'm like almost like a British person where I have to have tea time.
Yep.
So for me, what's really I know you don't stop it. I have tea. It's decaf. I have at 3 o'clock like clockwork. It's decaf, so it's fine. But I have my tea and I don't crave a cookie or like a biscuit with it now. I just have the smoothie and then I have the tea and then I go about my life with just the tea as it is. And it's a rough, dude, that's rough. I grew up in a tea. The word tea time with my husband is written in our vows. Think I'm
You
kidding.
broke your vows.
I will show you.
Or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah. We wrote, no, we don't break vows to each other.
But you
We
guys
bend
have do you have the biscuit and the cookie?
We don't have, we just have tea.
I like it.
And his new thing is like, so you're gonna want tea all the time. And I said, well, it's in your vows, son.
Bro.
So now he drinks this other tea that's really good for liver. What's it called? It is like a white thistle or something. It doesn't taste like anything, but it's like really good for liver detox because
Interesting.
for some reason his liver enzymes have just always been I don't know, it's TBI related stuff, but like just, yeah. So that brings it down, lowers it out, helps it. So we still have tea, but it's not the way I want it. But whatever, we're having tea.
Yeah.
I digress. It's been amazing, guys. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I'm really grateful you guys found each other, because I think it seems like it has just been magic in a bottle, and I know it's going to be growing. I know you're going to have so many more, whether it's kids products and vitamins and other things. And just really, I think the thing that I love so much about you two is whatever you do, it's quality. It's not quantity, it's quality. And we don't have enough of that. And I say this all the time and people hate it, but the truth is everybody has a podcast. Not everybody should have a podcast. And the people that stand out in the loud noise are people like you, people with quality content that matter, that are changing lives, that are healing lives, that are giving people tools. And so I'm grateful. I know my listeners are going to be thrilled to hear this episode. And I will make sure to put everything in the show notes where they can follow you all, where they can get Noble, how they can support you and meet Mafia. And ultimately, I can't wait to come back and do it again, guys.
Let's do it. I'm already ready.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, Kelsi.